Immortal Cultivation in the Cybernetic Milky Way. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51. Rescue. Nanling was quite nervous. He didn't expect to encounter such an exciting moment in his first pioneering mission. However, he noticed the combat armors on Fanny and Mo, and quickly lost this nervousness and excitement. What a joke, those were all custom-made armors that could not be seen outside and he had no idea of their value. The hurricane armor he had been thinking about could only be regarded as a little brother in front of them. Did he still need to worry about safety? Nanling looked at their speed of rushing back and the speed of the increase in the stratum index, and he breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they were in time. 10 minutes later, Mo and Fanna rushed out of the underground tunnel first and returned to the landing module. Fanna calmed down and seemed to have regained some leadership. She asked, "Xiaonan, how long do we have? Can the people below escape?" Nanling said, "There are still 5 minutes. The crust and mantle pressure index just experienced another increase in speed. It is recommended that you take off within 3 minutes. His words were very practical, which meant that even if Fanny wanted to wait, she could only wait for 3 minutes at most. Then he said, "Fortunately, Lao Mu and 2 other people also came up, but they are not as fast as you. They will be able to rush out in about a minute." Fanny's expression was slightly relieved, and then asked, "What about the others?" Nanling was silent. Li Ji played the villain for him and said, "The others have been delayed for too long. 10 people can arrive within 5 minutes, and more than 30 people can arrive within 10 minutes, but I don't recommend waiting for them." Fanny nodded and said, "Okay, let's follow Xiaonan's suggestion and set sail in 3 minutes." She was very decisive this time, and she didn't even care about the hundreds of people who would die because of her decision. They would die of greed, which everyone knew very well. Fanny said again, "But Lao Mu's people can be used." In her heart, Lao Mu seemed to have passed the test. Mo gave Nanling a pop-up box at the time and asked, "Can Lao Mu be trusted?" Nanling was speechless. Before he could respond, he saw Lao Mu and 2 people rushing to the landing module. At this time, the data reading that Nanling was staring at suddenly showed a peak again. He hurriedly said, "You must take off immediately. If the reading suddenly changes again, this place will explode at any time." He became nervous. He was the one who had been monitoring the data. If his boss was buried by the magma, it would definitely be considered a mistake on his part. Fortunately, the landing module slowly ignited successfully and finally began to rise into the sky. Nanling just breathed a sigh of relief. However, this breath was not yet fully exhaled. The ground below the landing module suddenly fluctuated like the sea surface. Then huge holes appeared on the ground below the spacecraft, and then on the side of the spacecraft, the ground suddenly bulged, and then there was an explosion. Boom! The scorching magma spurted out all at once. The high pressure from the ground forced the magma to rise into the sky like an inverted waterfall. The landing module flew a little slower and looked very clumsy. At this time, it was hit hard on the wing by the magma that soared into the sky, and then it lost its balance and rolled to the side and fell down. This was too fierce. The impact of the lava flow was not less than the frontal bombardment of the starship's main gun. No matter how powerful the landing module was, it was already very impressive to be able to withstand this blow and keep the main body intact. On the bridge of the Zhuoxia, Nanling and Li Ji stared in amazement at the landing module rolling and falling to the ground, and before it could react, a crack in the ground quickly extended to its bottom. The ground cracked, and the landing module slid down, and then the crack closed again in the chaotic movement of the strata. There was no trace of the landing module on the surface. Nanling and Li Ji looked at each other, and at this time they had a very tacit idea. Did they inherit a second-generation dedicated hunting ship? After all, Fanny was the captain and Mo was the first mate. After the 2 people with top authority died, of course, they had the final say with secondary authority. But after a brief hesitation, they saw determination in each other's eyes. This is not an inheritance that can be inherited casually. They hurriedly strengthened the communication signal and finally reconnected with the landing module that disappeared on the surface. "How is the situation over there?" Li Ji asked in a somewhat hurried tone. Mo's voice came from the other side. "Fortunately, the landing module has withstood the high temperature and high pressure underground, but our power system has been impacted and we can't get out by ourselves for the time being. Fortunately, the landing module is powerful and the communication can still be maintained." Nanling said. The armored Earth-penetrating vehicle is ready. After this planet leaves the perihelion and the crustal movement here subsides, we will immediately arrange for rescue. Mo said. You can ask Miss Fenyu for help. Fana said. Don't, then I won't be able to raise my head in front of my sisters. Sister Liji, Xiaonan, come on, I believe in you. The boss has ordered, what else can Nanling do? He and Liji nodded resignedly. Liji said, there are only 2 of us. Is there any rescue plan? Nanling pondered for a moment, then asked Liji, Aunt Liji, how many robots can you control at the same time? Liji said, I have a leader module in my head. If I use my computing power to the fullest, I can control thousands of robots at the same time. But I am still a human brain after all. It can only last for 5 minutes at full computing power, otherwise it will overheat and burn my brain. For a long time, I think 500 should be a suitable number. Nanling nodded after listening. He opened the permission of the drone he made to Liji and said, what about this drone? Liji felt it and said, your drone is very simple to control, but robots are much more complicated than this. In this case, it shouldn't be too stressful for me to control 1,000. Nanling nodded and said, in that case, I will lead the robots to rescue, and Aunt Liji will continue to stay on the ship as the last line of defense. Liji nodded after hearing this. Yes, we must always keep a hand for the worst case scenario. Their thoughts were on the same channel, and they quickly completed the communication. Mo then came to his senses and agreed, yes, we must also guard against looters. However, at this moment, Fanny suddenly said seriously, no, let Sister Liji come down to rescue, and then let Xiaonan provide support on the Zhuoxia. Nanling was a little surprised. Fanny said with a burning gaze, Sister Liji's leader module can perfectly control the robot rescue team, and has a stronger ability to survive than Xiaonan's mortal body. And Xiaonan can play that greatest role of backup on the Zhuoxia. This made sense, and Liji herself agreed very much. She said, that's right, if Xiaonan is on it, if anything is missing, it can be provided in time. Nanling did not speak, because he realized that there was another meaning here, trust. Compared to Liji, Fanny trusted him more. It's just that this kind of thing can't be said. Chapter 52 Rescue begins. After the group of people had discussed it, they began to implement the matter. Liji put on her prosthetic body without saying a word, and then walked to the hangar in a hurry. She might know what was going on in her heart, but as long as there was a legitimate reason and it was not said to her face, she would not mind too much. After all, she trusted Nanling more. With Nanling watching in the sky, she was really relieved. Nanling had prepared 100 armed robots and armored ground-penetrating vehicles in advance, and various supplies were prepared in the ground-penetrating vehicles for emergency use at any time. Liji also changed her clothes. The external equipment was similar to that of the robot, and Nanling did not have time to color her. Nanling came to the hangar together, handed over a helmet in his hand and said, we can set off in 15 minutes, be careful. Liji was different in Nanling's heart. She was a friend who had suffered together, and she was not comparable to those 2 rich girls. Liji glanced at Nanling, and suddenly chuckled and pushed the helmet away, saying, I don't need this. I'm just going to change my skin color. This time, I'll just wash off the current color for free. Nanling was silent for a moment, holding the helmet and silently retreating. He suddenly realized one thing, that is, he seemed to be the weakest among the 4. Now it seems that even if Liji changed into a sufficiently good prosthesis and loaded with comprehensive and perfect combat skills, she can immediately show strong combat power. This is the characteristic of this era. As long as there are resources, this level of strength can be mass-produced. But Nanling didn't really regard Liji as a robot. He smiled and stepped back a little and said, what skin color are you going to change to? Liji glanced at him and said, of course it has to be whiter. After all, choosing other colors requires several coatings to increase the level. For white, only 1 layer of simulated coating is enough. From the perspective of maintenance cost, white is obviously more convenient. Nanling then thought of something and said unhappily, now I am also responsible for all kinds of maintenance and inspection work on my ship. You should take it easy. If your body is too damaged during the mission, it will be very troublesome for me to repair it. Liji blinked when she heard it, then showed a wicked smile and said nothing. She turned her head to look at the armored ground-penetrating vehicle and asked, can we set off now? Nanling said, the crust is not stable yet. I suggest you land in 10 minutes. Liji said, the crustal movement has taken our boss to a depth of 10,000 meters underground. If we wait another 10 minutes, I'm afraid that our boss will not come back. Don't worry, I can command the operation in this armored ground-penetrating vehicle. Nanling seemed to be right. He was busy calculating Aunt Liji's safety factor just now, and forgot to calculate the dangers faced by the two bosses and superiors. He said, "Well, anyway, I have left enough margin for the ground-penetrating vehicle and made enough margin on the robots, so let's set off." As he said, he snapped his fingers. The cargo door next to the hangar opened directly, and then a row of whiteboard robots came out. He said, "You go down first. I will send down the armed pendants of these robots in batches after assembling them. These are all his stocks for a rainy day." He knew that this is the most reliable consumable. Liji nodded to him, and then walked into the armored ground-penetrating vehicle. This armored ground-penetrating vehicle is an ellipsoid structure with big pairs of wheels at the bottom. After being started by Liji, it slowly came to the delivery room in the hangar, and then 100 robots that had been armed walked in together. The next moment, the lower hatch of the delivery room suddenly opened, and all the existences in the cabin also lost weight at this moment. But after this short period of weightlessness, a stable and powerful gravitational traction ray directly sent them to the scorching surface of the planet below. So the ground-penetrating vehicle and 100 robots fell to the surface of the planet with the fire caused by atmospheric friction. Don't think this is the inferior gravity delivery that Nanling used on OB 7561. This kind of delivery does not require beacon positioning at all, and the impact of landing is actually relatively mild. At least there is no need to worry about the robots being smashed. Nanling asked. "Rescue team, report the situation." Liji's voice sounded. "The rescue team has successfully landed, and the rescue will begin. You have given this car a lot of functions." Nanling asked again. "How is the landing module?" Fan and I said in a muffled voice as if pinching her nose. "Nothing else, just the toilet is broken. You'd better hurry up, otherwise I can't help but purify this place. This is really an unforeseen trouble." At the same time, Liji's armored ground-penetrating vehicle also started a new mode. All 8 tires were retracted, and then 8 metal spider legs were spread out from all sides, supporting the entire body in the middle, like a big spider. Liji complained. "Why did you make this shape? Isn't this the shape of my brain vehicle?" It was only at this time that she felt Nanling's bad taste. Nanling said embarrassedly, "When assembling it, I thought about which form is most suitable for complex terrain operations. As a result, I found that this spider type is more suitable." Liji rolled her eyes at him in that communication and said, "You make me feel that you have a great body, but it seems that you are still running around with a brain vehicle." However, she and Nanling did not stop chatting. From the belly of the armored ground-penetrating vehicle, a powerful energy beam shot out and pierced the surface that had just closed. There are many faults under the surface. After opening a layer of the surface, the hollow fault below can be advanced quickly. It is not peaceful in this fault, because there are many triangular snakes gathered here. They have obviously adapted to the frequent geological changes here, and even their triangular bodies have evolved for this. The armed robot guards around the armored ground-penetrating vehicle and started a very tragic fight with these triangular snakes. At the same time, Liji appeared above the ground-penetrating vehicle. She watched the changes in the situation calmly and responded in time. Endless data streams flashed through her eyes. She had now activated her leader module, the top head, which served as the information transfer and command center for the 100 robots, gathering all the battlefield information for processing. At this time, she said, "I have only used 20% of my computing power. Send more robots down. We have to speed up." Nanling nodded when he heard this. 30 sets of robot weapons had been produced on the production line, and he immediately sent all the armed robots down. From the zooxia to the delivery location and then to the battle range of Liji, Nanling was controlling the 30 compact robots. He could do this through the signal amplification function of the zooxia. After Liji took over the authority of these robots, Nanling breathed a sigh of relief and said, "More armed plugins are being produced. You can safely use these robots as cannon fodder." Liji nodded and did not respond. She just said in the work group, "2 officers, I expect to reach you within 2 hours, if there are no accidents." Fana complained at the time. "Every time you say if there are no accidents, it is almost inevitable that there will be accidents." Mo gave the speechless captain an elbow at the time, and said as he was elbowed away, "Okay, thank you for your hard work. It's a great pleasure. This kind of crow-mouth deserves to be beaten." Chapter 53. There is always a backup plan. Liji stood on the top of the ground exploration vehicle. The scorching heat around her corroded her body, causing the coating on her body to begin to melt and fall off. A little bit of metallic luster was revealed from her body. But even so, she still looked very charming, making people willing to regard her as a beautiful woman. Nanling retracted his gaze and said to everyone in the landing module, "The possibility of variables cannot be ruled out, so it's best for you to try to repair the power device of the landing module. It would be better if both parties could run in both directions. 2 hours is too unsafe." Mo said, "You're right, but with the current level of communication between us, it is not realistic for you to transmit all the maintenance drawings of the landing module. The amount of data is too large. Although the landing module has the function of signal enhancement, it has sunk 10,000 meters underground, and this signal enhancement can only maintain basic communication." Nanling said, "Don't worry, I have already stored all the relevant drawings in the system of the landing module, you just need to call them out." Fanny's heart moved, and she said, "Okay, tell me how many backup plans you have prepared for us." She had a familiar feeling, that is, during the month in hyperspace, every time Nanling played games with them, she would always do a good job of assisting from all angles, and every time she encountered difficulties, she would have unexpected surprises. Now, she felt the unexpected surprise. Nanling coughed dryly and said, "The landing module has 4 small warehouses, 2 of which I put drinking water and food, and the other 2 I put 20 sets of spare external equipment and some weapons and ammunition." After he finished speaking, Mo said, "Well, we have discovered these, and this is also that key to our peace of mind." In terms of logistics support, Nanling did impeccable. But like Fanny, she began to expect Nanling to do more. Nanling said, "The landing module can accommodate up to 200 people, so there were originally 200 storage compartments." Mo was very curious why Nanling said this, but she knew that Nanling would not do it without a purpose, so she went to the locker room with Fan and I and found the storage compartments. Fan and I said in surprise, "There are 250 storage compartments." Nanling said, "Well, the storage compartments 201 to 250 were added by me later. Now you can use your own authority to open the password locks on them." Fan and I did as she was told. All the 50 storage compartments opened automatically at once. Mo dragged Fan and I back a little. Whenever she did, she would always protect Fan and I behind her. And the next moment, the things stored in the storage compartments were displayed in front of everyone. It was 50 whiteboard robots. These robots looked relatively slender in the whiteboard state, and they could fold themselves up and store them in the storage compartments for standby. When the storage compartments were opened, they automatically entered the power on state. As the electronic indicator lights lit up, robots stretched out and walked out, and stood neatly in front of Fanny and Mo, waiting for inspection. Nanling said, "This is what I prepared just in case you don't have enough manpower. The 20 sets of extra external armor can be slightly modified and put on them, and then they can go out to work in a high temperature and high pressure environment." Mo and Fanny looked at each other, and at the same time felt amazed. At this time, they were most in need of manpower. The only people around them were CK, Dingzhuoxia, and Taoki, 3 retired sergeants of the White Feather Corps, plus Fanny and Mo, and only these 5 people could participate in the work. The remaining Lao Mu and the 2 people were completely useless, because they did not have a smart core or a modified super brain, and they could not master such a complex blueprint in a short time. It was really difficult for these 5 people to overhaul the landing module, but now with 20 robots, the situation was different. Fanny's leadership peaked again. She suddenly paced back and forth twice, then pointed at Mo and said, "Mo, CK and Taoki, all of you go load the repair drawings and prepare to command the robots to carry out repairs." Then she said to Dingzhuoxia, "I remember you studied water magic. Do you know ice freezing?" Dingzhuoxia said, "Yes, Captain." Fanny looked at him with satisfaction and said, "Okay, you follow me to explore the space outside." Dingzhuoxia, the man who had nothing because of Bosch's trap, looked at her, the captain of the eldest lady, in surprise. But he didn't say anything, just nodded and said, "Yes, sir." He seemed to be the soldier who obeyed orders. But after hearing this assignment, Nanling knew what Fanny meant. This was to guard against this man. Regardless of whether he was set up by someone to fall into Bosch's trap, after this kind of thing happened to him, the speculative element in his character was really hard to convince people. Therefore, Fanny would not let him touch such a truly important matter, but she could not let this person realize that she was not trusted. So she chose to leave her back to this person generously. This was the greatest trust, and it also reflected Fanny's expectations for him. She hoped that Dingzhuoxia could truly change and learn from his mistakes to become a good person. At this time, the landing module was no longer falling. It was wrapped in dense magma, like a large piece of amber. At this time, Fanny ordered, "Open the hatch." As soon as this order was given, Lao Mu and the other three, who had calmed down a little, put on their helmets again in panic, and looked at Fanny in horror, thinking that this young lady was really messing around. Mo paused for a moment, and waited until they were ready, and then repeated, "Open the hatch." The next moment, the outer hatch of the landing module was opened, and immediately a large piece of hot magma was about to pour in. However, at this moment, everyone heard a phoenix cry, and then they saw their Miss Fanny, like a proud phoenix, rushing towards the backflowing magma with even more amazing burning flames all over her body. The molten magma actually vaporized directly at this moment. She rushed out directly, and then released terrible light and heat, not only vaporizing the magma at a high temperature of thousands of degrees, but also forming a high temperature bubble in the magma abyss. Fanny was absolutely sassy and arrogant at this time, and she simply stunned everyone behind her. Mo was accustomed to this. She reminded Ding Xiaoshu beside her, "Mr. Ding, it's your turn. Fanny just created this space, and you still need to use the ice condensation technique to cool down and stabilize this space." Ding Xiaoshu really didn't have any distracting thoughts at this time, and any distracting thoughts were burned away by this fire. Such a terrible individual strength, this has completely exceeded all the levels he has encountered before. Chapter 54. Can you win? In the magma bubble, the landing module finally hit space to start maintenance. As long as the power system of the landing module is restored, or even if it can be started and moved forward a distance, it will be extremely helpful for the rescue of Li Ji. Nanling watched the actions of both sides from above, and once again activated the gravity delivery device to send the third batch of 50 armed robots down. These armed robots were about to reunite with Li Ji, but they did not expect to usher in another violent geological fluctuation. The violent earthquake caused the tunnel that Li Ji dug when she came down to collapse completely, and another hole opened on the other side, directly leading a magma river to flow back in. The armored ground exploration vehicle was slightly sideways by the magma torrent, and then the 8 legs exerted force to stabilize its body. The only frustrating thing was that the 50 robots that Nanling had just sent down could not arrive. And Li Ji's original 130 robots were only left with more than 80 after the loss along the way. In order to pursue the speed of the advance, she had no time to care about the life and death of these robots. Li Ji asked, "Are there any reinforcements? My firepower has dropped significantly." Nanling said, "I can still squeeze out 20 robots in stock, but this time I need to come down from the newly formed lava crack to find you." Li Ji said, "It's up to you, as long as the reinforcements can arrive." She was a little annoyed, and finally shook her head and said, "Forget it, I'll be more cautious and not use the gravity delivery device again. The abnormal gravity phenomenon may attract the attention of some forces. It's better for us to try to avoid unnecessary trouble now." Mo said, "That makes sense, Sister Li Ji. You can slow down a bit, and Xiaonan should try to keep silent and don't make any more noise." Nanling responded and waited patiently on the Zhuoxia. The landing module needs about 40 minutes of maintenance time, and Li Ji's excavation speed is slightly slowed down, but it can also guarantee that it will reach the track place within 2.5 hours. And if they rush in both directions after 40 minutes, then perhaps they can complete the connection within an hour and a half. At the same time, he was also paying attention to the situation of the surrounding starry sky on the Zhuoxia, and he was very vigilant. However, Murphy's law is, if there is a possibility that something will go wrong, no matter how small the possibility is, it will always happen. On the bridge, Zhuoxia suddenly sounded the alarm. Violent hyperspace fluctuations have been detected, and they will reach the nearby airspace in a quarter of an hour. Nanling's expression tightened, and he asked, "Can you calculate the number and volume of hyperspace fluctuations?" Zhuoxia said, "It can be roughly calculated that there are 3 large ships and 120 small ships." "Acting Captain, what should we do?" Nanling's expression was a little solemn. This number was a little beyond his expectations. This number did not seem to be the scale of looters, nor did it seem to be merchant ships. Nanling was very entangled in his heart. At this time, Fanny had already said, "Shonen, retrieve immediately and find Fenyi for help." She obviously heard the situation here. Then she said, "This is beyond your ability to cope with. Anyway, there are enough resources on the landing module and we can hold on for a long time." Li Ji also looked up at the sky in a trance and said, "This is the best solution. As long as you bring the Baiyu 6th Legion back as soon as possible, we can still be saved." Nanling gritted his teeth and said, "Let's wait and see. I believe that with the excellent performance of the Zhuoxia, we can deal with it first." He did not leave because the uncertainty of leaving was too great. If all the people on this planet were gone, what would he do alone? So he gave Xiaoxia the first order as the acting captain. Immediately send a distress signal to Miss Fengi, saying that we found an unknown fleet cruising outside the wind region, and it is obviously plotting something bad. He paused for a moment, then said, "How many drones do we have now?" Xiaoxia replied, "Because this kind of small drone is very easy to make, there are now 8,000 drones." Nanling said, "How many have already been equipped with bombs?" Xiaoxia replied, 1,800 have completed the bombing. Nanling said, "Okay, release all the drones, and the 1,800 drones with bombs will ambush around the 3 big guys, and the others without bombs will aim at small targets. I want to strike first." His temper came up, and he just did it. In addition, the main gun of the Xiaoxia is charged and ready. He knew that the moment the spacecraft escaped from hyperspace was the most vulnerable time, but the number of the opponents was too large, and he was not sure what kind of damage he could cause. Fortunately, as Miss Fanny's vehicle, the Xiaoxia still had a certain guarantee. The main gun began to charge. This is a battleship-level main gun. To say that its firepower is not as good as that of a battleship is just to say that the number of secondary guns is relatively small. The main gun is fully qualified. A quarter of an hour passed. This was too short a time for Nanling. Only half of his drones were deployed. But there was no other way. He had to deal with this guy first. The next moment, the space began to fluctuate, and the fleet consisting of 3 large ships and hundreds of small boats suddenly popped out of the void. Nanling didn't even try to distinguish where the ship came from. He just ordered, "Drone, hit it. Main gun lock the target, fire." He was unreasonable and used all the available weapons in one breath. The unknown fleet on the opposite side just appeared, and the people on the ship hadn't come back to their senses in the hyperspace state. As a result, they were awakened by a burst of urgent alarms, and then a surging main gun bombardment came to their faces. Among the 3 large ships, the one in the middle was hit by this main gun on the spot. Although it had the shield turned on, the shield had been greatly consumed due to the hyperspace flight. Therefore, the shield was directly torn apart, and the cannon light that was offset by most of it continued to fall on the front deck of the big ship. At that moment, a silent fire burst out, and the front deck was completely torn apart, and a big hole was punched out. At this time, the self-destruct drones ambushed by Nanling surrounded it, and a series of fire burst out again. Each time, it was an explosion at the level of a nuclear bomb. Therefore, after a short moment, a series of self-destructions also occurred inside the ship itself, and then a large cluster of fireworks was lit in the dark void. Nanling felt comfortable watching this scene. While completely blowing up a big ship, he did not dare to relax at all, and continued to monitor the remaining ships. Unfortunately, the remaining 2 ships withstood the attack of the self-destruct drones. After all, starships of this magnitude have extremely strong shields, and even if they're weak, they cannot be dealt with by hundreds of self-destruct drones. In contrast, the drones that hit the ramp for suicide attacks performed well. Although those small boats also have shields, the strength of the shields is much lower than that of the big ships. Often after being hit by drones 40 or 50 times, the shields will be torn apart, and then the hull will begin to be damaged. "Keep charging the main gun, I won't leave." Nanling's expression was fierce, as if he could beat them. Thanks to the big dog, this Xiaoxia is really useful. Chapter 55. Unimaginable combat power. The battlefield was in chaos, mainly because of the chaos caused by the drone swarms, which made the sudden fleet flustered. Especially the large ship that was lit up with fireworks, which obviously stunned them. However, they reacted quickly. The 2 large warships charged their main guns and fired their secondary guns one after another. Nanling was still a little unsure. After all, the opponent's firepower seemed a bit fierce. He didn't know if the shield of the Xiaoxia could withstand the second main gun bombardment. He looked at the shield energy scale nervously. Wait, what is the energy scale? He rubbed his eyes and looked at it carefully. Then he counted the number of zeros, and then he confirmed that the shield strength of the Xiaoxia hunting ship had reached 100,000 scales. Give me the parameters of the opposing battleship. Xiaoxia immediately displayed the parameters of the opposing battleship in front of him, and then added a note. Acting Captain, the opposing ship is an old-style Star-class battleship, a model from 300 years ago, with a total shield scale of about 20,000, and the possibility of special modification cannot be ruled out. Nanling looked at the energy scale of his own Xiaoxia again, and then asked, "The shield energy of Xiaoxia?" Xiaoxia immediately said, When this ship was built, it was benchmarked against the most advanced supernova-class heavy battleship in the ancient domain, but because of its insufficient size, it cannot show the 300,000 scale shield energy level of the supernova-class battleship. That means that this ship is still reduced. Nanling felt a toothache at the time. Ancient domain, it turns out that the eldest lady's surname is Gu, and she should be called Gifana. Watching the secondary guns of those battleships bombarding the energy shield of Zeuxia was like spring rain falling on a pond, just causing a few ripples. Nanling was left with only sighs and the idea of hugging thighs. Such a young lady, you have to hold her tightly. While he was sighing, Zeuxia said, "The main gun has been charged and can be fired at any time." Nanling was shocked again. It was charged so quickly. It is indeed a hunting ship with the latest technology. I didn't expect it to perform so well on the battlefield. But think about it, this is equivalent to using a reduced version of the latest battleship to fight against an old fleet. It is foreseeable that it can have such a crushing advantage. He responded immediately, and the recharged main gun aimed at the second target without hesitation, and then fired. Another surging stream of light shot out and hit the target accurately. The total value of the energy shield of this battleship is about 20,000, and it did not rest much after ejecting from the hyperspace, so that it only has less than half of the energy scale at this time. So the shield was blown off with just one shot. By the way, it was also shot through the hull. And this shot was fired at a very tricky position, directly hitting the bridge. Good guy, beheaded. Nanling was so satisfied that he rubbed his hands. Because the last shot was fired because he was tired of the automatic aiming and tried it out. His intelligence core also joined in the fun and sent him a system message. Update user information, comprehensive shooting upgraded to level 6. TSK, is this even calculated into his shooting ability? Anyway, it was very enjoyable. The main gun began to charge again. And it was not until this time that the opponent's first main gun attack landed on the shield of the Zeuxia. The charging speed of this main gun is 25% slower than that of the Zeuxia, and the performance cap is really too big. Nanling was also a little nervous at this time, fearing that this shot would penetrate the shield of the Zeuxia. However, the shield of this ship is more reliable than he thought. When the main gun bombardment phase is over, the shield energy scale has dropped by more than 8,000. From the beginning of the war to now, the shield has not lost 1/10 of the energy scale. When the remaining warship saw this situation, what else can it fight? Turn around and run, not caring about the life and death of those small spaceships. Before the Zeuxia's main gun was fully charged, it had already used the gravity of the nearby white dwarf to enter hyperspace. Continuous entry into hyperspace flight obviously caused great damage to it. Nanling saw that at that moment, many fragments fell off the ship. The remaining small spaceships on the battlefield were stunned for a moment, and then immediately fled away like crazy. They couldn't afford to offend them, so they could only run at this time. Nanling did not order a pursuit, because he knew very well what his only important job was at this time. So he said in the work group, "The crisis has been resolved." Fana responded unwillingly, "I didn't expect that the Zeuxia's first battle would be occupied by you. My chest hurts. It's like a beloved car that you wanted to show off your driving skills, but ended up being taken by someone else. This feeling is really bad." Mo said, "Well done." Then she sent a private message to Nanling, "I'll give you a bonus this month." Nanling smiled immediately when he saw that. Why is Fana the big boss, but he only loves Sister Mo? Because the person who gives him money every time is Mo. More importantly, every time Mo would automatically add money, instead of waiting for him to ask for it, which made people feel happy. There were no more accidents in the following events. Li Ji steadily advanced underground, and the landing module finally recovered a little power under Mo's control, and then went up with Fan and I opening the way. Fan and I is really strong. Or it can be said that her equipment is really strong. It is true that Jinn and monks are very strong, and the lethality shown by Fan and I did not exceed the scope of Jinn and monk's full strength attack. But her equipment allowed her to turn the strength of this full strength attack into continuous output, which is very scary. The landing module was carried by her to mount the rock layer all the way up, and the speed was not slow. Finally, after about an hour, the robot rescue team led by Li Ji finally reunited with everyone. It's safe. Fan and I sighed. Her performance this time was scary, but she was really tired. At this time, Nanling's voice sounded in the communication. "You better hurry up. According to the previous experience, there will be another violent geological activity here in half an hour. Fanny nodded and said, "Okay, everyone move to the armored ground exploration vehicle, and we will return immediately." Liji looked at the landing module that was a little broken after being washed by the magma, but it was obviously still usable, and asked, "Is this landing module still usable? Are you just going to abandon it?" Fanny said, "Abandon it? What else can we do? We should hurry back to the Geoxia. It's unbelievably free and easy." What a dog-rich demeanor. But at this time, everyone was eager to go home, and they all agreed with this. If Fanny really couldn't bear to part with this landing module and wanted to find a way to pick it up, then everyone would have a headache. Chapter 56. Taking stock of gains and losses. With Fanny and Mo riding in an armored earth-penetrating vehicle and returning to the hangar of the Geoxia through gravity traction, this indicated that the expedition had been completed. Nanling personally went to the hangar to greet the two young ladies who had returned, and said happily to them, "I'm glad to see you back. My job is finally saved." Fanny rolled her eyes at him and said, "I was quite touched to see you fighting for us and the fleet of raiders, but you make me feel that my touch is cheap." Nanling responded with a smile, and then said to Mo, "Sister Mo, don't worry, I've cleaned up your gym." Mo's expression was much more tolerant of him, and she said, "We'll work out together in the future." This really treated him as her own person, and this was the reward for his hard work this time. Nanling naturally responded with a smile. He then saw Liji, who was dressed in a silver-white metallic color. Her bionic paint had completely fallen off, and now she looked like a robot in the eyes of everyone. But Nanling's eyes on her were the most friendly, and he didn't say a word, just nodded slightly. Liji also nodded slightly to him, and went to her room alone. Fanny turned to the others and said, "You all should go and have a rest. This time our operation suffered heavy losses. It was because of my improper command as the captain." Lao Mu immediately said flatteringly, "This has nothing to do with the captain. It was the greed of those people that harmed them." Fanny said, Okay, I know you have worked hard, and I will give you a bonus." She was a little impatient and decided to solve the problem with money. Of course, Lao Mu thanked him profusely, with a smile on his face. He also came over to greet Nanling. "Hey, Shonen, you are now a popular person in front of the eldest lady, don't forget to take care of us old brothers." Nanling smiled and perfunctorily said, yes, now I have to report to the captain, you go and have a rest first." With that, he left. However, he then heard a conversation through his gaseous perception that he had been using the whole time. "What are you so proud of? He's just a lackey. SHH. Keep your voice down. If he hears us, we'll be in trouble. What's there to be afraid of? Can he kill us?" At this time, Lao Mu's voice sounded, "Okay, be careful. That guy is not easy to mess with." This sentence calmed the subsequent arguments. Nanling was hundreds of meters away from them at this time, even separated by a passage, but the sound of their conversation still reached his ears. He shook his head helplessly, knowing that these people were just more speculative, but he didn't expect them to be so hostile to him. Perhaps they felt that they should be the same and couldn't bear to see that he was living such a good life now. Nanling didn't think too much about it. As long as these people didn't mess with him, it would be fine, and he would be ready to make some response plans at any time. He came to the bridge. Here he met up with Fanny, Mo and Liji. And CK, Tauki and Dim Zoshu also followed behind. Their identities were more trustworthy, and this time they were taken to the bridge. Seeing that everyone was present, Fanny said, "Everyone has done a great job this time, and your value has been demonstrated. The bonuses will be directly deposited into your accounts later. In addition, because of Shionen's outstanding contribution this time, I will promote him to the third officer of this ship. Do you have any objections?" Nanling himself had the biggest objection, and he actually didn't want to take on these things. But since the big boss said so, it would not be very disrespectful to refuse in person. Seeing that no one objected, Fanny nodded and said, "It would be best if everyone agrees. Okay, now let's take stock of the gains and losses of this operation. Mo, I'll leave it to you to preside over it." Fanny threw the blame away, and sat in the captain's seat, propped up her chin, and began to slack off. Mo first looked at Nanling and said, "Let's talk about the losses." Nanling said, "In terms of losses, the biggest one is the landing module. The others are the damage to 118 robots and the loss of 6,654 drones. But these losses are completely negligible compared to the landing module. If Nanling remembered correctly, the official asset price of this landing module was 8 billion. The other stuff probably couldn't even be worth a fraction of this landing module." Nanling just felt disgusted with this kind of waste. But Miss Fanny didn't care at all. She waved her hand and said, "Let's skip the losses. What I care about is where the enemy who attacked us just now came from." Li Ji was already connecting to the battlefield information records. She said, "After analysis and comparison, it should be a fleet of looters, and it may be the largest Death Star pirates in the vicinity." Mo asked, "Are you sure?" Li Ji said, "It's certain. It can be identified from the flags and paints hung on the 3 large ships of the other side. The only question now is, why did the Death Star pirates come here? Is it a coincidence or something else?" Fanny shook her head and said, "Why bother so much? They are just looters. Just fight them off." She didn't seem to take it seriously. However, the next moment, Fanny had whispered in the work group, "Keep an eye on these 3 people. The 3 people on the Zhuoxia are capable of exposing our coordinates. Each of them has doubts." Under that seemingly arrogant look, there was an extreme caution. Nanling was very pleased with this. He suddenly felt that Fanny's usual carefree look might be a disguise. It was actually quite reassuring to have such a boss. At least there was no need to worry that the platform would sink at any time. After a brief exchange, Nanling suddenly remembered something and said, "I sent a distress signal to Miss Fenyi of the Bayou 6th Fleet before. What if they come over?" Fanny was slightly stunned, then laughed and shook her head and said, "That's just right. Wait for her to come and discuss this business with her." Mo suddenly said, "Are you going to sell this planet to Miss Fenyi?" "This is a good idea, but how much is the lady going to sell it for?" Fanny said, "Just 10 billion. Fenyi and I are friends, so I won't negotiate the price with her. Sell it to her at this price. Whether it will make a loss or a profit depends on her own management." This man is really straightforward in doing business. And the fact is just as Fanny expected. When the Bayou 6th Fleet hyperspace jumped to this airspace, Nanling looked at the 2 young ladies' sarcastic and mocking word through the communication projection. "Fanny, are you still here? I thought I was going to rescue you from the black cell on the Death Star. Fenyi, you're still so slow. I've already killed the Death Star fleet. Fenman Man is worthy at being Fenman Man. He's so slow again and got nothing. Unlucky guy, you're really a disaster star that causes trouble wherever you go." Are they really reminiscing about the past? This old relationship is so plastic. This has risen to the point of mutual personal attacks and exposing each other's shortcomings. But when it comes to the price of this planet, Fanny offered 10 billion, and Fenyi readily agreed without bargaining. The price Fanny gave may not be high, and the location information of this planet was actually provided by Fenyi. Don't look at their sarcasm with each other just now, but they actually have a good relationship. Anyway, Nanling doesn't understand the way these young ladies made friends. He will be satisfied as long as he gets the bonus. Chapter 57. Healthcare for Auntie Fanny and Fenyi talked very straightforwardly, but the specific implementation required Mo and the people in the 6th Fleet to discuss in detail. The boss didn't worry about this. Nanlin, the little guy, didn't worry about this either. Aunt Li Ji was already waiting for him in his room. Of course, it wasn't something that couldn't be discussed in detail. It was a serious maintenance of Aunt Li Ji's body. Well, a serious health care. Anyway, when Nanling returned to his room, Li Ji's head was already on the black cat's body, curled up on his bed and dozed off. And the prosthesis was thrown at the foot of the wall like garbage. Even though that color of the clothes was very low, there was no charming color at all. Nanling stretched out his hand in front of its chest, and the chest cavity opened by itself, revealing the mechanical cavity inside. His intelligence core began to load the information and design drawings of the prosthesis, and soon saw its self-test information. Although there was no major damage, because of the long-term combat in extreme environments, there were obvious signs of abrasion in many places. These places will not affect the use of the prosthesis, but if there are too many, it will inevitably cause some destructive damage, and it will not be so easy to repair it at the time. Nanling asked a robot to fetch the toolbox he prepared, and add coating and oil to Li Ji's prosthesis. Anyway, it is a set of routine maintenance plus targeted maintenance. Li Ji took a nap, opened her eyes and saw Nanling coming back, then she said, "Why are you joining in the fun while the young ladies are chatting? I didn't expect you to be so gossipy." Nanling said, "No, it's just that the bonus hasn't arrived yet, and I'm a little worried." Li Ji said with a look of understanding, "So your Sister Mo just sent you money again?" Nanling said, "Yes, Sister Mo is very straightforward when sending money, so I have another 300,000 inches savings." Li Ji was slightly stunned when she heard the amount, and then she came to her senses and said, "Are you planning to have a big initiation?" Nanling nodded, and he said, I will plan to have one when I am ready to build my foundation at the 10th level of key refining, and save the money first. Li Ji showed a little joy when she heard it and said, "It sounds fast." Nanling said, "It will take some time, but it won't take too long." He seemed modest, but in fact he was full of confidence. When he stabilized his 8th level of cultivation, he could immediately start trying to open up the meridians in the 5 internal organs at the 9th level of key refining. The training of key refining stage was no longer difficult in his eyes. He just needed to follow the steps. He even had to wait for his body to catch up. However, Li Ji seemed to be hesitant to speak. Nanling kept working, secretly opening the back of Li Ji's prosthetic body and installing 2 gums in the cavity of the buttocks for self-defense. He asked, "What's wrong? Don't like to hide gums in your buttocks? Then I can whiten your hips and hide gums there." Li Ji gave him a pair of solid metal eyes. She said, "I don't like it if you hide a gum anywhere on me. Let's not talk about that for now. I have a suggestion to tell you, but it's up to you whether to accept it or not." Nanling put down Aunt Li Ji's butt and asked curiously, "What?" Li Ji bowed as if stretching, and she said, "I have also studied some information, and found that many rich kids will undergo a comprehensive physical recuperation before or after a breakthrough. I think you might as well try it before you try to break through." Nanling was surprised, and quickly searched for relevant information with his wisdom core. After a moment, he said, "Are you talking about recovery and recuperation?" Li Ji nodded without saying anything. As she said before, she was just giving a suggestion. But as someone who took another route of strengthening, she actually studied this information. Nanling pondered for a moment and said, "That makes sense. Practicing all the way, and even the various jobs over the years, will leave different degrees of hidden injuries on the body. Using recovery and recuperation to recover these hidden injuries and then break through the realm in their best condition may be more stable." He looked at Li Ji and said, "Aunt Li Ji, thank you for your advice. It is very useful to me." Li Ji laughed, and then teased, "Then can you put my butt back? Or if you really need it, I can help you solve it." Nanling's face was embarrassed. This aunt is good at everything, but she always wants to tease him. He put Li Ji's body back together with a click, click, click sound, and then said, "Okay, I'll help you spray that bionic paint, and put your head back quickly, so that there will be no color difference when it is sprayed out." Li Ji's head returned to her prosthesis. No clothes. Nanling worked seriously with a spray paint can. It is true that this prosthesis looks perfect, but he was calm and had no desire at all. After all, he had just disassembled this body. Look at this butt that looks more perky than before, and inside it are the 2 gums he just stuffed. And the pair on the chest, well, there are some little surprises. Li Ji said. "Speaking of which, CK's body should also need maintenance, didn't he come to you?" Nanling said. "For that kind of thing, just send 2 robots to do it." The tone was casual, and he didn't take it to heart at all. Li Ji's eyes moved, and after Nanling finished, she hung herself on the fixed bracket next to her, and then said, "I'll hang here for a while, and wait for the new paint to dry before leaving." Nanling waved his hand without raising his head to show that he understood. He is now studying the matter of recovery and recuperation, which is indeed a very good idea, but there is no professional recuperation device for recuperation on this ship. If he wants to do recuperation, he can only wait until he returns to Chunyuan 06. However, he checked the price of recovery and recuperation. Not to mention the complicated procedures, it costs about 100,000 Lingzhu points. This is of course very expensive. But Nanling could only grit his teeth and admit it. After all, this kind of thing is really necessary. At this moment, his doorbell rang. Nanling and Li Ji were both surprised. Why would someone visit here? Li Ji was a little annoyed. She was still naked, but because the bionic paint she had just sprayed had not completely dried, she had to leave it like this. Nanling asked first. "Who is it?" Mo's voice came from the door. "It's me, Mo. I have something to talk to you about." Nanling turned his head and looked at Li Ji. Li Ji breathed a sigh of relief and said, "That's okay, open the door. Anyway, I'm an old aunt, there's nothing to be embarrassed about." Nanling opened the door. Mo walked in with a heavy heart. It seemed that he really had something important to discuss with him, but he suddenly looked up and saw Li Ji hanging there to dry, and his eyes widened in surprise. Nanling explained, "We're doing maintenance and repainting on her." Li Ji added, "If you have any secrets to discuss, I'm sorry. I'll have to trouble you to go somewhere else. I can't leave now." Mo didn't think anything wrong about this. After all, she knew that Nanling and Li Ji should be like relatives and friends. She said, "That's not necessary." Sister Liji, you are also an important member of our team. I was going to find you after I found Xiaonan. Now that you are here, it's just right. Nanling asked in surprise, what's the matter? Mo said, the person sent by the White Feather Court to negotiate with me is not a simple guy. Although I don't want to admit it, I actually embarrassed the lady this time. It sounds like he suffered a loss in the negotiation about the 10 billion. Nanling thought it was outrageous. How could he be related to such a large amount of money? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 58. When spending money becomes a problem. Mo briefly explained the matter. Actually, to put it bluntly, Mo was too young and had no experience of bargaining in the market, so he was forced by the words of an old man to make a seemingly disadvantageous agreement. That is, by you 6th Fleet purchased the ownership of the colored disk galaxy at a price of 10 billion, of which 1 billion Lingzhu points were directly credited to the account, and the remaining 9 billion would be converted into supplies and provided to Zhuoxia, and Zhuoxia would enjoy a 40% discount when purchasing supplies with this 9 billion. Nanling looked at the agreement and really didn't think that such an agreement would be negotiated by Mo. After all, cash is king in any era, and the original cash has become a virtual asset of Single Dust Fate 06, which is a bit too much. And the so-called 60% discount, everyone knows how many tricks there are in it. After all, the price of a normal bulk purchase as Fanny is also this discount, which is completely different from the retail price. He looked at Mo, who had a bitter face, and said with great distress, Sister Mo, I know this is definitely not your fault. It must be that young lady who held you back, right? Sister, you can't be depressed. If you're in a bad mood and are not happy to pay, then Nanling will be unhappy. Mo felt much better after hearing this. After all, she has been through this for so many years, and this time there is someone who can understand her difficulties, which is at least very comforting. She said, now that things have come to this, I came to you this time to ask you to accompany me to count the inventory and see how to use this quota. Try not to lose too much. Nanling understood after hearing this. He couldn't help but use his brain and said, has the agreement been signed? Mo said, no, but the general direction has been determined and cannot be changed. Nanling also felt a headache after hearing this, and asked a few more questions about the details of the situation at the time, and finally figured out what was going on. Speaking of which, behind every prodigal young lady there must be a devoted follower or housekeeper. The person who just negotiated the contract with Mo was the hard-working person behind Fenyi. When the two sides meet, it is natural that they will try their best to gain benefits for the young lady. As a result, the person on the other side was even more shameless. He actually ran directly to the two young ladies and cried poor, saying that the cash flow was not enough or something. Miss Fanna could not see this, and she waved her hand and set such a price. Nanling listened thoughtfully and said, Sister Mo, I actually don't think you need to be depressed. Because maybe Miss Fanny is proud at this time, after all, you have made her face. Mo didn't understand for a while, and even Liji, who had just dried her clothes and was about to wear them, sat down next to her with her clothes and asked, what's the reason? Obviously, we exchanged a large amount of cash that we could have obtained for a bunch of virtual quotas. How can this be a huge loss? This is of course a huge loss, but Nanling knows how to make the leader happy. So he said, in fact, we have suffered a big loss, but Sister Mo, do you think our eldest daughter will care about this kind of loss? Mo shook her head and said nothing, but she already understood some of Nanling's meaning. Nanling said again, although she seems to have suffered a loss, in fact, Miss Yi's housekeeper came to her like this, for her, isn't it the same as Miss Yi bowing her head and begging for mercy? So Sister Mo, don't worry, maybe the eldest daughter is praising you for your ability in her heart, and Miss Yi is eager to change her housekeeper. Mo suddenly realized that this seemed to be true. But she would not feel happy about it. She said, even so, I still feel uncomfortable in my heart. Let's think of a way to use up all these quotas. He is sure that we will not be able to use up these quotas for a while. Nanling asked when he heard it, didn't we just lose a landing module? A landing module costs 8 billion, right? By the way, it is said to be 40% off, which means 4.8 billion. Mo said, Miss Fenyi heard that we lost a landing module and has given away a landing module under her name. Including the modification cost to match the Zhuoxia, the total price is 3 billion. You're right, Miss Fenyi must want to save some face to do this, but it is obvious that her housekeeper did not understand and was going to give it away directly. Nanling laughed and said, in that case, it will be much easier. How much of the supplies here worth? I must buy more high-tech equipment. By the way, there shouldn't be any purchase restrictions on that kind of thing. Mo nodded and said, that's right. I'm actually planning to buy a batch of high-level reinforced armor enclaves, but that's not cost-effective for the Zhuoxia. Nanling nodded and said, that's right, it's better to buy more blueprints and materials. As long as those things are not too advanced, you can make them yourself. Mo looked at him helplessly and said, okay, then I'll exchange more blueprints and materials for you. Obviously, she saw Nanling's selfishness at a glance. After all, these blueprints and other things were exchanged, wouldn't they be given to him at a low price in the end? As for the materials, he could also use them to practice. After all, it was public money, so it would be a waste if he didn't use them. Nanling was a little moved by her look and felt that he was really flattered. Then he said with a smug look, in fact, we can also buy some auxiliary equipment such as spiritual power infusion devices and healing devices. After all, System O and Miss are both nobles. They can't come to this space station to infuse spiritual power or do full body recuperation when they need it, right? Li Ji's eyes widened on the spot. She had never seen such a shameless person. After buying this equipment, he must shamelessly come up and use it. But Mo agreed and said, this is a good idea. Using external instruments will leak our body data. Whether it is the stability of Fanna's Jindan realm or my future breakthrough to the Jindan stage, we will need it. Let me see, a spiritual power infusion instrument is 1.8 billion, and a healing and recuperation instrument is 2 billion. Add it up and it's 228 billion, and there is still 3.72 billion quota. Shonen, I'll give you 300 million quota, and give me a list before tomorrow. And Sister Li Ji, I'll give you 300 million quota too, and by the way, build your reconnaissance team. Mo began to allocate quotas, and he really didn't feel soft at all. But even so, there was still more than 3 billion that couldn't be spent, which really troubled Mo. After all, these quotas can only be exchanged for physical objects quickly to avoid losses, the sooner the better. Nanling saw her so happy, he couldn't help asking. Sister Mo, is it possible that they can't supply so many goods for a while? Mo was refreshed when she heard it. She pointed at Nanling and said, you reminded me that the contract must stipulate the arrival time of the materials. She felt that Nanling had helped her avoid a pit again, otherwise what if the other party was shameless enough to find excuses to delay that delivery time? Then she said, as for the remaining amount, I'd better go to Fanna to decide. After all, the money is hers, let her decide how to spend it. With that, she left in a hurry. Nanling and Aunt Li Ji, who was half-dressed, looked at each other, and suddenly felt unreal. They were actually going to start worrying about how to spend money. Although the money did not belong to them, the things they bought could serve them. And Nanling felt that it was nothing if the remaining 3 billion was not spent. In fact, it was worth it at the market price. But at this moment, Mo suddenly came back in a hurry. She threw a small item to each of Nanling and Li Ji and said, this is a souvenir for you. I almost forgot to give it to you just now. After that, she left completely. Nanling looked down, stunned. In his palm, there was clearly a glittering primordial crystal. Li Ji said with emotion, Mo is actually a very good girl. Nanling nodded and said, of course, do I need you to tell my sister Mo? Li Ji rolled her eyes at him unhappily and sighed again. What a shameless guy. Chapter 59 Mixed Doubles. Nanling has been busy as hell lately, mainly thinking about how to spend money. He found that even if he spent freely, he might not be able to spend all the money. This is the difference in vision and pattern. Nanling is used to the perspective of the bottom, always thinking about saving money as much as possible, and even if he can't save money, he will spend money as much as possible. So this 300 million budget is not in place. In fact, he can do something with this money and make a lot of money from it. But, he just accepted someone's gift, he has to save face. Nanling looked at the original crystal in his hand with some emotion, he was easily bribed. The focus of the original crystal is not the ancient spiritual energy stored in it. That thing will not become precious because of its antiquity. In fact, the spiritual energy in it will dissipate completely in a short time when it is out of the high-pressure environment. And its real preciousness is the crystal itself left after the spiritual energy dissipates. This crystal has the best spiritual power conduction performance among all known materials at present, which means that this is the best main material for making magic tools. Nanling now has 3 sets of armor, and the next step is to have his own combat armor, and then he can make magic tools to fully equip himself. Nanling wanted to work hard on his own, but Sister Mo skipped the steps for him. He felt that this was a humiliation to his belief in struggle and shook his persistence. However, with his efforts, a new set of logistical needs was also listed. Mainly, he made a budget for 4 more folding shelves in the sky, and because of the limited space in the warehouse, he planned to put 2 spare shelves in his room. Look, who said that he couldn't use the things bought for the government? As long as he didn't treat himself as an outsider, he could use all the money. He has awakened the skill of white bleaching and is determined to carry it forward. These days, Nanling has planned a major upgrade for the robot production line on this ship, which can be improved by 2 levels. The main budget was also spent on this, because this mission made him feel that robots were needed to protect the Eudoxia, and it was impossible to rely on those random recruits. In the first mission, the pioneering team failed by more than 90%. This must be very annoying for Fanny, right? Although they are all bad people in the lower zone, it must have touched her a lot. Let's go, everything is settled, let's go. Fanny waved her hand and was impatiently ready to run away. Although she knew what she meant, Mo still had to ask, "Captain, where are we going?" Fanny said, "Where else can we go? Of course, we should go to Chinyuan 06. Mo nodded and began to operate. Because this place is close to a massive planet, it is very convenient to make a hyperspace jump. The spacecraft entered the hyperspace flight mode after 15 minutes, and Nanling once again experienced the state of complete stillness of his body. Once again, the state of silence of the body and active thinking came again. The first time is new, the second time is familiar, and he quickly adapted to the stiffness of his body this time. And through the intelligence core, the hyperspace active group became active again. "Shonen, it's time to work," Fanny said excitedly. Nanling responded, "What game is the boss going to play this time?" He was quite resigned to his fate. He was just playing with her, and he was getting paid anyway. Now he had basically decided on how to address Fanny. He would call her boss when there were no outsiders around, captain when on a mission, and young lady when talking to others in private. Fanny showed a sad look. She said, "To be honest, I don't think there are any fun games anymore." Mo said, "Then don't play. Isn't it better to comprehend the realm?" Fanny said, "I finally escaped from that unlucky place. Can't you let me take a breath and relax?" Mo had a speechless expression, which could be summed up by the word exhausted. Nanling did not express any opinion on this. He just had to listen to the boss and didn't need to use his own brain. Fanny said, "It's boring to play games all the time. Why don't we review the space battles that occurred in this mission? This is a rare actual combat case for us." She looked uncomfortable because she was not in command this time. Her beloved ship was taking the lead by others. This feeling was terrible. So her face was serious, and she immediately said to Nanling in a familiar way, "First of all, I have to say something about you. Your choice to stay and face the unknown fleet was really amateurish. Normally, no one would do that." Nanling listened humbly at the time, swallowing his anger without any displeasure. After all, she was paid. She paid him money and didn't let him do anything, just listening to her complaints. That was really a heavy love. But Mo was unwilling to do so. She said in a rather protective manner, "Fanny, if it weren't for Shionen's insistence, we would definitely be in danger of falling into the hands of those looters." Fanny said unconvincedly, "Let them come. Do you believe that I will tear the starship apart for you to see?" Mo said helplessly, "Don't be so stubborn. If it weren't for Shionen, you would definitely be laughed at by Miss Fenyi." Fanny stopped talking after hearing this. She thought it made sense. So she said, "Okay, let's skip this beginning part and talk about your ambush for them. I have to say, this is a good idea, but it can only be used to deal with amateurs like looters. If it were a regular army, each hyperspace jump would be divided into echelons and various contingency plans would be made. Your method can only trap the Vanguard fleet at most." She looked like a teacher. Nanling listened thoughtfully and nodded in agreement. He really felt that he had learned something. Fanny just wanted to complain about people from a different angle, but suddenly she felt confused when she saw Nanling's look as if he had learned something. She asked, "What do you feel?" Nanling said seriously, "My feeling is that in the future, we can't push all the resources at once. We have to make more reasonable gradient arrangements according to the number of the opponent. Well, and we have to prepare more resources. Yes, the self-destruct drones also need to be upgraded. Boss, please give me another budget later, and I will upgrade the explosives of the self-destruct drones." The previous time, we couldn't even break the shield of the old battleship. It was a failure. Fanny. ... She didn't expect Nanling to react like this. What's the matter with this overly strong sense of crisis? She couldn't help but say, "That's because I'm not on the ship, otherwise I can definitely use my excellent command art," Mo immediately said seriously. "Then please try to stay on the ship in the future, Fanny." Fanny lost her voice again, not knowing what to say. Seeing that Mo supported her, Nanling immediately nodded and said, yes, boss, you don't know how nervous I was at the time. I'm just a logistics manager, but I had to command a battle. Don't come to me for this kind of thing next time." She looked at Mo on the left, then at Nanling on the right. Oh my god, she felt like she was being played in a mixed doubles. Chapter 60 The Boss's Encouragement. Fanny finally thought of a good way to play in the hyperspace state, that is, she would be a teacher and teach Nanling, the student. The teaching was also very simple, that is, Space Combat Command. The reason was also very high-sounding. If this situation happens again next time, Shonen can do better. Nanling was stunned. Would he have to face this situation again? Mo had no choice but to join in and teach Nanling. You know, they were all talking about the elite education content in the ancient domain higher education institution. Nanling even omitted the process of complaining in his heart, and directly listened carefully to these theoretical knowledge to fill his own knowledge system. As a person who seizes every opportunity to climb up, he certainly understands how rare this opportunity is, so he listened very carefully. Good guy, paying him a salary and giving him lessons, Nanling found that his love for Miss Fanny was getting deeper and deeper. However, he found that this love was misplaced after all. Because he met the first teacher who chose to give up teaching because the theoretical knowledge was too boring. Can this world ever be better? How come he can always meet such a teacher? After Fanny lost her patience, she simply had a new idea, which was to drag Nanling to actual combat teaching. Each of them commanded a fleet and fought a large-scale battle in the airspace. It was a real-time strategy game of this era. Nanling was bullied badly, because this kind of real-time strategy game depends entirely on which side has stronger computing power. Fanny's computing power must be overwhelming Nanling's. Her intelligence core is at least 2 levels higher than Nanling's Zifeng suit, and her computing power was beaten to pieces. But the boss seemed very happy, so Nanling was calm. He could only try to resist Fanny's vicious offensive with limited computing power under the situation of overall disadvantage, so that he could hold on longer and make the boss more satisfied. The miserable situation made Mo, who was watching, a little bit unbearable to watch. He just felt that this was too pitiful and almost gave him a salary increase. Nanling didn't think it was a big deal. On the contrary, he felt that he was also honing his command ability, which was just a simple defensive ability. The games of this era are becoming more and more realistic, almost exactly the same as reality. Nanling even noticed that people in his fleet would surrender to the other side. He still had to prepare a plan to deal with surrender or morale collapse, which was really annoying. But the game is still a game after all, and there is no way to solve these problems by talking. Fortunately, he can adjust the proportion of AI in the fleet, which can help him solve this problem well. He felt more and more that it was very convenient to use AI assistance. Even if Fanny attacked like a tide, he could gradually hold on. However, this discovery surprised him. Even someone like him who was naturally wary of intelligent machines thought so. What about other people in this era? Do they all think that AI is the most useful assistant, or even think that it is more reasonable to let AI replace people's work? Nanling suddenly realized a very dangerous signal. Recalling his experience in the lower district, those people were strictly speaking eliminated by AI replacing their positions. More and more simple jobs are being handed over to AI, and if ordinary people want to guarantee their income and jobs, they must do higher level things, or things that AI cannot touch but are very dangerous and require life. Take Chunyuan 06 as an example. The upper zone is the people who control resources. They are the controllers of AI and the people of destiny. The middle zone is the people who can compete with AI. AI cannot completely replace their functions, and can only improve work efficiency through auxiliary means. The lower zone is the people who were eliminated by AI or failing their life-threatening struggle. Nanling has a clearer and clearer understanding of the structure of this era. As his understanding of this matter increases, Nanling has become more and more panicked. He doesn't know what it will look like in the future. Also, is there any hope for this civilization? He doesn't know. He just lowered the proportion of AI in the next game, and tried his best to find a way to adjust the morale of his fleet. This process is very difficult. After all, there is no way to use mouth-to-mouth. Moreover, the situation simulated by this game is imperfect after all, and he can only notice some things that will cause a sharp drop in morale and make improvements. This is another way to improve yourself. Actually, after experiencing 2 hyperspace trips with active thinking, his defense against intelligent machines has been reduced a lot. Because he has realized that AI is really an indispensable assistant for humans. Maybe his vision is still low now, and he is looking at these issues from the perspective of his previous life, so he appears to have all kinds of doubts. At least from what he has seen, AI in this era is still completely controlled by the human brain. At most, the top people control AI, and then the middle-level people compete with AI, and the lower-level people are driven by AI. This month is actually very important for Nan Lin, as it is the time to truly form his battlefield command style. Adequate preparation or even excessive preparation is one, trying not to let humans fight alone is the second, and not sending human fleets to do cannon fodder is the third. These 3 points are the basics he has summarized in command. As long as these 3 basic points are done well, he can always maintain the morale judgment system until the ammunition and food are really exhausted. So wonder his operation, it is like a game of material allocation. Fanny also had a lot of fun playing, because she always won, and it was refreshing to bully the weak. But it was not good to bully the weak all the time, mainly because Nanling always resisted seriously, which made her unable to stop. Anyway, Nanling was really good at pleasing the boss, and he was really capable. This month was spent in the process of Nanling being abused. Mo would send him private messages to comfort him from time to time. But Nanling enjoyed it. At least he used this game and boss Fanny to build a basic data model for himself. To what extent can a human fleet with normal morale persist when facing an enemy with absolute superiority? Nanling greedily absorbed all the knowledge he could reach. At the same time, during this month when he could not feel his body, he also had an illusion. It was as if he had become a ghost in the data world. Accustomed to the cold data, even if he recovered his body, he maintained a sense of absolute rational thinking for a while. Fortunately, the Jukes theory turned to Chunyuan 06. He watched the spaceship dock silently in his cabin, and then cheered up. It's time to be busy again. Chapter 61 Whole Body Recuperation. In the next 5 days, Nanling was busy receiving new supplies. This has been a busy schedule for a while. There are 2 folding space shelves in his room, which shows that there are too many supplies to put in. The new landing module is also being adjusted. Miss Fenyi sent her landing module at the time. Nanling did not participate in the whole process of this transformation. He just decided on the transformation plan and handed it over to the robot to operate it. What he really cares about is the spiritual power infusion device and the healing and recuperation device that have just arrived. These 2 devices can be said to be the most expensive, even more expensive than the high-end landing module. Of course, it does not mean that their actual value is really higher than the landing module, but that they are too useful for cultivators. Nanling personally participated in the installation and debugging, and then he was eager to lie in it and try it out. Of course, what he bought for nearly 4 billion was not just 2 small devices, but 2 sets of modules. Each module corresponds to several interfaces, which can be used to infuse spiritual power or recuperate for different people at the same time. Anyway, as far as Nanling knows, there is an interface in each of Fanny and Mo's rooms, and it can be considered complete by connecting to the sanatorium. What he cares about is the other 3 interfaces placed in the medical room on the 3rd floor. He really wants to try whether they can be used, but he is a little embarrassed. Then please try it first. Mo, who was debugging next to him, saw his little thoughts at a glance and said with a smile. Nanling smiled and pretended to be polite to his big sister. He said, "I'm so sorry." Mo said, "Just think of it as compensation for the grievances you suffered while accompanying Fanny for the past month. Since it's a test, I won't charge you for the materials." Nanling immediately wanted to rush up and hug and kiss her. Mo was really considerate. As a result, Mo saw through his thoughts at a glance, kicked him over and said, "Don't go too far, you guy." Nanling rubbed his chest and stood up, still nodding and bowing. He was indeed a little too excited just now, but who let Sister Mo be so lovely? Mo glanced at him unhappily and felt that this guy was too slick. But it is undeniable that among the recruited talents, only Nanling is the one she really likes and can train well. As for the others, even Li Ji, they can only be said to be suitable. With Mo's vision, she has naturally seen too many people who can show their talents after relying on super brain transformation and intelligent core to improve computing power. Those mass-produced talents are replaceable at any time. They have no choice but to recruit people in Chunyuan 06. But even so, as long as Li Ji proves that she is really trustworthy, then of course they will not want to replace her. But Nanling is different. Facts have proved that she is the third person who can temporarily control the overall situation when Fanny and Mo are both busy. Mo was about to go out, and suddenly looked at him and said, "What do you think of Lao Mu's 3 people?" Nanling was about to take off his clothes after Mo went out, but was suddenly stunned by this question. He asked, "What happened to Lao Mu and the others?" "Why should I have an opinion?" Mo said, "All 3 of them have undergone super brain transformation. Although their computing power is far inferior to that of Sister Li Ji, it is almost the same as yours. Although they have not told me explicitly about anything against you, they have been coming to me to ask for more responsibilities. I just want to ask, what kind of work do you think is most suitable for them?" Nanling was a little confused after hearing this. Is he the one who makes the decision on such things? But he didn't think much about it, and just said, "Then let them be responsible for the maintenance of the robots. They should be able to do such things." Mo pulled the corner of her mouth and said, "That's right, this will free up a lot of computing power for you. Okay, I won't bother you anymore." After saying that, she walked away with her hands behind her back. Nanling took off his clothes in no time when he saw this. It's not that he is perverted, but this is how the sanatorium is. When he was lying naked in the sanatorium, he turned on the recovery mode, and saw a nutrient solution prepared in a special proportion was injected into the sanatorium. At this time, an oxygen mask was lowered to cover his face, and he was completely immersed in the nutrient solution. Then a strange wave was generated in the sanatorium, disturbing all the nutrients in it and slowly permeating into Nanling's body. The intelligence core began to work, guiding the spiritual power to continuously circulate in Nanling's body, assisting in the absorption of these nutrients. Those nutrients permeated his body and soon began to repair the agony on Nanling's body. Although Nanling was very careful in maintaining his body, there were still many problems with his body. When he was a child, he didn't pay attention to eating, which meant that his foundation was damaged and his vitality was actually damaged. There was also the strong radiation he suffered when escaping from OB 7561. Although he was cured later, it still caused a certain degree of damage to his body. That actually reduced the upper limit of Nanling's body. Even when he tried to break through when his spiritual power accumulation was not enough, it was also a kind of strain on his body meridians, but it was hidden. The perspective ability brought by the auxiliary instrument could not discover all of these, which was also an inevitable defect in external equipment. But now, Nanling discovered these problems through his own body's feelings, and secretly thanked Aunt Li Ji for this reminder. This is indeed very helpful for him now. Of course, he also has to thank Miss Fanny and Miss Mo for their sponsorship. This recuperation is precious. Nanling only felt that the hidden injuries on his body had a very obvious improvement in a very short time. But after that obvious improvement, the rest had to be completed slowly within 6 hours. Recuperation and recuperation, after all, have to be done slowly. Nanling felt that this was too slow, so that most of these expensive nutrient solutions were actually wasted. He felt that this was really a waste of natural resources, so he couldn't help but think about how to make use of them. Then he thought of a good idea. The spirit furnace in his chest opened, and a stream of spiritual power was poured into his meridians, which made his meridians uncomfortable in an instant. Then he worked together with the wisdom core to guide these spiritual powers to flow continuously in his body, actually refining them into his own cultivation. If the spiritual power in the spirit furnace cannot be refined for his own use, then it can only be used as a reserve power forever. If it is refined for personal use and stored in the Danton, then it is your own cultivation, which can help your body and thus improve your life level. However, spiritual energy is irritable, and cultivation cannot be excessive, otherwise it will damage the meridians. This is why Nanling has 3 sets of equipment but still has to accumulate step by step. Now, he can build his body as much as he can during the recuperation without worrying. Even if he is a little aggressive during normal cultivation, it doesn't matter. At most, he will spend money on recuperation. Another advantage of moving the recuperation device to the Juxia is that he only needs to pay for the nutrient solution to use this device. In short, it takes 100,000 spiritual bar points to use it normally in Chinyuan 06, but now he only needs to pay 35,000 for materials. This is the importance of a good platform. It is also an insurmountable gap between the lower class and the rich. The rich have a platform, which can achieve twice the result with half the effort. And even if the lower class works very hard, it is still a move with twice the result with half the effort. Chapter 62 Release Notice. The release date of this book is set for October 6, which is the last day of the National Day holiday. There will be more chapters on the shelves, about 5, 6 or 7 chapters, but it is definitely not as stable as when I was doing Archu. I am not in good health, so I will try to maintain 6K. There is actually a controversy in the early stage of this book, and I know it well. That is, after a stage in the early stage, I did not write the kingly plot of one person working hard from the bottom, but chose a relatively easier and more daily plot such as a group adventure. To be honest, that's because I wanted to reward myself when I wrote this book. After all, the kingly plot is good for reading experience, but I feel tired when writing it. Because in that case, I always feel that what I want to depict is a world full of malice, otherwise why would the protagonist go out alone? Old friends all know that I like to depict a world with good intentions. I'm good at this and I like it this way. As for the kingly plot of one person working hard, well, next time, I will definitely write a casual cultivator next time. By the way, I would like to recommend Yantian by my friend Wilai, who is the author of Zane Yuan. The writing style and plot are absolutely trustworthy. Now this book Yantian has more than 1 million words, and it is very smooth and you can start reading it. Chapter 63 Something unexpected happened again. Nanling did not do anything out of the ordinary during this recuperation. He just used this opportunity to guide the spiritual power to fill his meridians as much as possible to make up for the lack of accumulation. Nanling was actually quite curious. The recuperation was already like this, and he didn't know what the spiritual power infusion would be like. He couldn't help but have some expectations, but he didn't have to think about it for the time being. After all, the spiritual power infusion was what he prepared when he broke through the foundation building period. Strictly speaking, he is not much different from ordinary people now. Only after the foundation building is completed can he show his supernatural powers. It is said that with the completion of the foundation building, some people can also show specific innate magical powers. I don't know if he will have this benefit. Nanling finally survived 6 hours with beautiful imagination. The nutrient solution that has become wastewater was emptied in the recuperation cabin, and then the cabin door was opened. Nanling slowly sat up from it, stretched out his hand and clenched his fist, and felt stronger and more relaxed. He had been injured in this arm before, strained when lifting heavy objects. For this reason, he also studied whether to change a mechanical arm to increase the ability to bear heavy objects, but he didn't make up his mind to do so at the end. Later, this became an old injury over the years. He couldn't clench his fist too tightly, otherwise he would feel a throbbing pain in his forearm. And this time, he clenched his fist to the bottom for the first time in a long time, and felt the healthy feeling of this arm again. In fact, his whole body seemed to be restored to factory settings. When the spiritual power in his body was running solid and heavy, he could lift heavy objects with ease, not to mention how smooth it was. He was very happy. This was the peak state of his body. This feeling of strengthening his body brought by being born as a human being was really intoxicating. At this time, he stood up and took a shower in the medical room, and then opened the door to go out and prepare to go back to the room. Now his cultivation has reached the peak of the 8th level of Ki refining. When he has time, he should try the 9th level of Ki refining. Nanling is now all ready, just waiting for brave advancement. He is even ready to break through 2 levels in one breath, and then take care of his body again before building that foundation. In this era, there are many ways to practice, and the hard way of enduring the years has become the most clumsy way. However, on the way back to his room, Nanling happened to meet 3 uninvited guests, namely Lao Mu and his 2 companions. "Hello, Lao Mu." Nanling greeted him in a very gentle tone. Lao Mu saw Nanling and smiled heartily, saying, "Hello, Brother Xiaonan, it's been a while since we last met. What have you been busy with?" Nanling said, "I'm just running around for the bosses." Lao Mu sighed, "You're making the brothers envious. You said we also want to find a proper job on this ship. How can we do it?" Nanling pretended to hesitate and asked, "Brother Mu, aren't you from the exploration team? That's a good job. I heard that you found a vein of primordial crystals before. This is really enviable." He made an envious expression. Lao Mu laughed dryly when he heard this, and the other 2 followers beside him also showed a vigilant look, as if they were afraid that Nanling would say that he would share the primordial crystals they picked up. Fanny was generous and did not ask them to hand over the previous underground exploration. After a slight pause, Lao Mu said, "Don't mention it." Fortunately, the 2 young ladies took us out in time, otherwise we would have been buried alive like those greedy guys. Under such circumstances, how can we have time to make a fortune? Nanling nodded upon hearing this, and did not show his dissatisfaction in his heart. He said, "What positions do you want, brothers?" Lao Mu said, "Hee, I just want to trouble you to say a few good words to the two young ladies and give them a random job. No special arrangements, really." Nanling was in a hurry to go back to practice, so he didn't have time to talk nonsense with him here. So he nodded and said, "Okay, I know, I will talk to Miss Mole later, and there should be results in the near future." It has been agreed, so he said this with certainty. In fact, in his opinion, Lao Mu and his people are still unstable factors on this ship, but this is not his ship after all, and Lao Mu and his 3 people have also demonstrated their obedience to Captain Fanny in their previous actions and have not made any mistakes. So from Fanny's perspective, she might hope to train these 3 people well, not to reach Li Ji's level, but also to be useful, right? Then, after a few more polite words, Nanling rejected Lao Mu's invitation to have a drink together, and passed by and continued to return to his room. Of course, the gaseous perception also brought back some of the 3 people's discussions about him, such as not knowing how to respect others and looking down on others. They were not good words, and they were obviously not satisfied with him. Nanling didn't frown when he heard it, because he was indeed looking down on others and didn't want to socialize with them, so what's the big deal? In fact, Lao Mu had already invited him several times, which was very sincere. But Nanling refused without exception. After all, these social interactions took up his time for self-improvement, and he wouldn't participate in them like Fanny and Moa paid. This behavior is actually very hateful, but so what? Nanling returned to his room and closed the door. He looked around and came to the 2 large space folding shelves in the corner of the room. These 2 shelves, one for food and one for backup robots, can be regarded as his power in military logistics to exercise his personal favoritism. He took out a large bag of some kind of pink juice concentrate from the food shelf, reported it through the system, and then poured the pink creamy juice into the gallon bucket that had been prepared long ago, and then aerated it, a full gallon of pink sparkling water. This is simply the most superior enjoyment that Nanling can think of. He took a big sip for himself, tasted it, and felt that the previous Elixir juice was better. Of course, this taste is not bad. He is mixing different juices with different gases to find a suitable taste. Of course, drinking a breath and soaking in juice is also a necessary ritual before he enters the practice, otherwise he always feels that something is missing. After a burp, Nanling really began to practice. Under introspection, the spiritual power was carefully guided into the internal organs, meridians, and acupuncture points. Fortunately, the 8 extraordinary meridians have been opened, and these 8 extraordinary meridians originally passed through the internal organs. Now, all the connections between them need to be opened to complete the 9th level of Ki refining. At this time, his spiritual power is full, and all the hidden dangers in his body are gone. It is time to work hard. But he did not expect that something extremely frustrating would happen out of the blue. He was moved in his heart and woke up from the state of moving spiritual power into meditation, because on the side of his bed where he was in meditation, he could see many soldiers of the Dust Fate 06 Garrison Army gathering around him at the dock where he was docked. What's going on again? Chapter 64 Trouble at the Door. Nanling hurriedly checked the work group and found that there seemed to be no movement. She quickly posted this scene in the group and said, "What's going on? They seem to be coming for us." Fanny did not respond, and Mo immediately went online. "I am confirming the situation." Fanny went to the space station to meet Miss Fenny. "I can't contact her, or rather, neither of them can be contacted." Nanling asked curiously, "Have we done anything illegal?" Mo shook his head and said, "Everything is under the control of Shiaxia. Any transaction details are clear, and the taxes that should be paid are not missed. No, I'm worried about Fanny. I'm going to find her." Nanling was stunned for a moment, then asked, "If you go to find Fanny, what about the Zhuoxia?" Mo didn't think much. She directly handed over the temporary authority of the Zhuoxia to Li Ji and said, "Sister Li Ji, I'll leave it to you here. I know you have improved rapidly in recent times, and this matter can only be done by you." Nanling didn't think there was much wrong with this. After all, if the captain and the first mate were not there, then it would be natural for the second mate to handle the affairs. He had already started thinking about how to help Li Ji deal with those people. However, at this moment, Mo said to Nanling again, "Xiaonan, I need someone who is familiar with this space station. I need you to help me get out of here away from the eyes and ears of these people." Nanling was a little bit unbelievable. "Is this a job he can do?" he said. "I have just started practicing the 9th level of Ki refining. Are you sure I can do it? Mo said. I believe you can do it. Don't worry. I will pay you. Nanling shook his head and said, this is not a matter of money. I'm really not sure about this matter. Mo sighed and said, I will give you 50,000. Nanling immediately stood up and said, wait for me to pack my things, and then where will we meet? Mo said, the old place. Nanling was surprised. He and Mo still had the old place. Then he realized that it was the gym. He immediately went to the arsenal next door, took out a set of made black close-fitting armor and put it on himself. This is the inner armor of the Hurricane armor he built by himself. It can be used as a spacesuit or a single soldier protective suit. It has a strong pressure resistance and a certain stealth function. Taken alone, it can be regarded as a good special combat equipment. It's a pity that his Hurricane armor has not yet started to be made, otherwise it would be very cool to wear it all. He put on this inner armor and came to the gym. He saw Mo also wearing a close-fitting inner armor waiting for him here, which was considered to be the same idea. Mo glanced at him and said, Hurricane inner armor? Have you made a lurking module? Nanling replied, yes, this thing can be used on the inner armor, so I made it as soon as possible. Mo nodded and said, okay, this is the soundless inner armor, which is enough to take you away silently. Nanling was quite surprised to hear this. What is the soundless inner armor? Then he understood the meaning of it. Sound should refer to thunder. Thunder attribute armor without thunder is enough to reflect the characteristics of this soundless armor. Nanling didn't say much, just asked, when do we leave and how should we leave? Mo said, wait a minute, I want to see how Sister Li Ji copes with it. If we are sure that she can handle it, we will leave. Nanling nodded. How did Li Ji deal with it at this time? Suddenly, a rather stern voice came from the other side on the bridge. Eudoxia, please release the shipborne AI authority immediately and cooperate with our boarding inspection. At this time, the enemy's army was approaching, and it was on the territory of Fenyu. Anyone should be under great pressure. Li Ji was the same. She grew up in Chenyuan 06. She was accustomed to the rule of these upper-class people. It can even be said that it was like a mountain pressing on her heart. However, she just paused for a moment, then sneered and said, Dream, if you have the guts, just smash the hatch and rush in yourself. It was very tough. Mo and Nanling looked at each other. They didn't expect Li Ji to respond in such a reckless manner. At this time, the voice sounded, you are just a lowly person in the lower class. Let the real person in charge speak. Li Ji's voice suddenly laughed sharply and said, I'm the person in charge of this ship now. You think that I, a lowly person, am not worthy of talking to you, right? Then don't say it. There was a silence on the other side. Mo shook his head and sighed, this person is from the Feng family. It seems that this action is aimed at Miss Feng Yi. It's true that one thing conquers another. If I come forward, I will always have to respond to them, and I will inevitably be weaker in terms of momentum. But it's different if Sister Li Ji comes forward. Now it seems to be very effective. Nanling understood the truth behind this. This is actually the great nobles suppressing the small nobles, and the small nobles can suppress the common people, but the little people who have nothing can in turn not care about the status of the great nobles. At this time, Mo said the leader is not in the group. Sister Li Ji, that's it, they dare not really use force. This Zeudoxia hunting ship is a starship with the first-class immunity of my ancient domain. Boarding the ship is like boarding the territory of the ancient domain. If they really want to mess around, my ancient domain will force Feng domain to give an explanation for the sake of diplomatic face. Li Ji was refreshed when she heard it. She said, I understand. It means that I can do whatever I want to these upper-class people, right? I have wanted to do this for a long time. Then Mo heard how rich the words of Chenyuan 6's dialect were when he was cursing on the street. However, Li Ji was very smart in cursing. She would never greet the ancestors but only greet everyone present. It was undoubtedly a personal attack, but because it was only directed at the person himself without involving the ancestors, the other party had no room to play. The other side was provoked and jumped up in anger. Enough, believe it or not, I will send someone to rush in and cut you into pieces. Li Ji sneered and said, guess how long it will take me to send a war warning to the ancient domain. That's right, if you rush in, I'm dead, but you're dead too. Which young master of the Feng family? Oh, it's young Master Su, I'm sorry. Feng Su on the opposite side did not show his face, but he was very surprised to be exposed. He asked, how did you know? Li Ji said, I just checked which enemies Miss Feng Yi had on Qinyuan 06, and then mentioned it casually. Speaking of which, Master Feng Su is really bold. He actually dared to lead people to surround the Zhuoxia. If you can't explain why, this is a serious diplomatic incident. Hearing this, Mo pulled Nanling and said, let's go. It's reassuring to leave this to Sister Li Ji. She sighed, I didn't expect that Sister Li Ji is also a very powerful person. At least her courage and decisiveness have surpassed many mediocre people. Nanling said, although Aunt Li Ji is taking a path that is considered by the world to be mass-produced, it is always her experience and will that determine a person's fate. She is unique. Mo was surprised, and seemed surprised that Nanling could say this. But she didn't intend to say more about it, just said, follow me, it's our turn. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 65. Let's do something together. Nanling followed Mo to the top deck of the spacecraft. Through one of the maintenance hatches, Mo jumped out of the hull. To be honest, when I followed Mo to climb the escalator of the maintenance passage, I looked up and saw the round outline swaying in front of me, which made me feel dizzy. Fortunately, he survived. Mo turned her head and looked at him. It seemed that she felt the gaze staring at her from behind. Although she was a little embarrassed, she didn't show it too intensely. She rolled her eyes at him and said, don't think about it. Follow me closely from now on. Don't leave me within 3 meters, otherwise I won't be able to take care of you. Nanling came back to her senses, and then her eyes swept around. She immediately felt keenly that there were more than 20 surveillance equipment facing them. At this time, they were standing on the top of the Zhuoxia, looking down from a high place, just in time to take in the situation below. Of course, the entire Zhuoxia ship must have been included in the surveillance. Mo seemed to know his worries. She reached out and brushed her hair around her ear and said, don't worry. I have hacked into all the monitoring systems here and erased our figures from all the monitoring screens. Just a simple word was enough to make Nanling's heart surge with fear. He had seen Fanny's power through the screen before. He was amazed by the mighty force that seemed to burn through the earth. Compared with Fanny's direct power, Mo's silent power made Nanling feel more powerful. However, he was still a little uneasy and asked, Sister Mo, Qinyuan 06 is an important border town in the Wind region. There should be some very powerful technicians, right? Are we being too high profile? Mo said lightly, what are you afraid of? There must be a technical officer who is more powerful than me here. Even if he is more powerful than me, he must first find me. Nanling hesitated a little, because Mo's words sounded very contradictory to him. But then he thought of something and said, is this the wonderful use of thunder attribute spiritual power? Mo nodded and said, it's also that talent awakened when I built my foundation. I can directly physically interfere with those hardware that uses electricity. So unless those technical officers find that their hardware is wrong, they can't find us from the perspective of the system. Nanling was deeply moved when he heard this. Mo's ability is very powerful in this era of widespread use of electricity. Perhaps because of the emergence of various energy weapons and shields, the power of various spells of practitioners is no longer so prominent, but there are always some people who can find another way. Mo is obviously such a person, and her value is reflected in her assistance. No, in Nanling's opinion, she is very balanced, and all her abilities seem to be to help Fanny, whom she follows, to make up for her shortcomings. Fanny is a turret mage, so she has enhanced her ability to charge and fight in a small range. Fanny is in charge of the overall situation, giving random ideas, so she has enhanced her execution ability. Fanny is conspicuous, so she studies the ability to make herself inconspicuous. Is this a follower? Nanling was a little jealous of Fanny. How happy it was to have someone who cared about her wholeheartedly by her side. Without saying anything more, they came to the side of the spaceship and prepared to jump to the ship in the next berth. The two sides seemed to be close to each other, but in fact there was a distance of hundreds of meters between them. And this distance of hundreds of meters required 2 people to jump over. Nanling thought about his own big jump, but the noise was too loud and he couldn't do it silently. He was afraid of being exposed. Mo had already pressed his bag with one hand and took him up. Nanling could feel a tiny electric field surrounding him, which actually produced a precise counterforce with the artificial gravity of the space station. It couldn't completely offset the artificial gravity, but it was no problem to make a big jump. This allowed him to float in the air, and then he was pulled by Mo to float a long distance in the air. But in a moment, Mo was a little embarrassed because she obviously jumped too short. Obviously, she misjudged the strength required to carry Nanling, a young and strong man, which was different from carrying Fan and I. Fortunately, Nanling reacted in time, and he also used a light wind pressure technique to help push behind them, allowing the two to float forward again in a way that violated the laws of physics for a distance before landing on the starship parked next door. They landed safely and did not attract the attention of others throughout the process. The cooperation between the two can be said to be tacit. Mo was also slightly relieved, feeling that Nanling was unexpectedly useful. She sent a text to Nanling's retina. I want to go to the golden axis of the space station, what can you do? Golden axis, Nanling is familiar with that place. Fenyuan Operation Company is on the golden axis. It's just that the middle area is the office of Fenyuan Operation Company, and the upper area is the golden axis, which is the administrative center of the entire space station. Nanling said, I don't know about the upper area, but I know how to go through the middle area without being discovered. Of course, if you want to go through the lower area, you can, but there is a risk of being discovered. Mo was surprised. She did plan to go through the lower area at the beginning. Needless to say, the upper area must be closely watched by various spies, and she herself is not sure that she can avoid so many surveillance. The middle area is an option, but after all, it is a place where the Feng family has extremely strong control, and she can't take risks. Going through the lower area is a last resort, although there is also a risk of being exposed. But now looking at what Nanling said, it seems that he is sure about going through the middle area. Mo suddenly thought of Nanling's job before he came to apply for the job. Wasn't he a maintenance worker on this space station? Nanling said with a smile. That's right, we'll go through the maintenance channel. And because of my high credibility, I actually have the maintenance drawings for the entire middle and lower levels. Mo was overjoyed and said, send me the drawings quickly, and we'll go now. Nanling shook her head and said, no, if I send you the drawings, I'll be sorry for the trust that Chenyuan 06 has placed in me. But it's okay if I take you there, I'll lead the way. Mo was shocked, looking at Nanling and felt like she was looking at a psychopath. Is this person really sick? However, there was no way. Nanling had already walked forward, and she could only chase after him. After all, they couldn't exceed a range of 3 meters, otherwise they would be exposed. They rolled down from the other end of the starship next door, and after landing, they immediately walked to a corner of the airport without any pause. Nanling looked at this place, squatted down and pointed to the ground. He said, this is the entrance to the maintenance channel. My identification code has been invalidated. Can you hack in? He could also perform the hacking operation with the smart core, but he was afraid that he would mess up if he was unfamiliar with the business. Mo nodded, and a flash of light flashed in his eyes. The ground in front of them suddenly opened up, revealing a downward passage for one person to walk together. Mo said, you go in first, I will recover. Nanling did not hesitate and jumped down first, but did not fall directly to the bottom, and maintained a distance from Mo. Then Mo also hurried down and restored the data of the entrance to the maintenance channel to restore it to its original state. The two entered the pipeline interlayer together, which was Nanling's area of expertise. Chapter 66. Infiltrating the upper area. Nanling led Mo through the countless energy pipelines. There are maintenance passages here, but the maintenance passages at the airport are not suitable for 2 people to pass through. After all, the maintenance passages here are not only monitored by various surveillance, but also maintenance workers pass by from time to time. Nanling led Mo forward and said, it will be much better when we reach the middle area. The maintenance passages there have been abandoned and no one will move there. Mo didn't say anything, but just quietly followed Nanling to move quickly in the energy pipelines for a while. Then, obviously out of the airport, Nanling took her to levitate with the anti-gravity system, and then pushed her to fly close to the ground with the wind. This speed is much faster. But Mo felt a little awkward. Although she also controlled the electromagnetic field to wrap Nanling to create an anti-gravity field, it felt strange to be wrapped by Nanling's wind power, as if there were many hands pressing on her body. As they walked forward, Mo asked, why is this place abandoned? Nanling said, because people from the lower level area have been coming here to cause damage. Mo said, as far as I know, you have been working here when you were in the middle level area, right? Nanling said, yes, when I left, I had almost repaired everything here, and it can operate normally. But, he stopped halfway and looked at a device that had stopped again. He sighed and continued, but some places are broken again. It seems that the damage is still in the key parts. It is really a precise strike. Mo is an understanding person. She said, it seems that someone doesn't want this place to return to normal. Nanling didn't say anything. He was too lazy to investigate who did it. There'll always be someone who doesn't want the lower level people to live too well. It's unknown how long the energy pipeline here has been operating normally. Now it is once again full of energy radiation. It is impossible to survive in it without protective clothing. It took the two of them about an hour to pass through the sandwiched pipeline between the middle and lower levels without any danger. The two quietly came to the maintenance channel below the Fenyuan Operation Company. Mo breathed a sigh of relief and said, it's basically done if we can get here smoothly. Nanling asked in surprise, it's done. Is the young lady in here? Mo nodded and said, the positioning system I installed for her shows that she is above this golden axis, that is, the upper area. Now we have to find a way to enter the upper area through this maintenance channel. As she spoke, she had projected a picture of the golden axis's architectural structure in front of the two of them. Nanling's eyes widened. This was clearer and more detailed than his simple maintenance map. Mo glanced at her and said, I just got it. Don't worry, it won't affect your credit value. Nanling shook his head helplessly. He valued his credit value, so naturally he still had expectations of staying in Chenyuan 06, which was a way out for himself. Mo obviously understood his thoughts very well and would not embarrass him. To be honest, this way of getting along was very comfortable. If Mo forced him to help her at the cost of credit value, then he would do it for the sake of money. But this was just a deal. When he should leave, he would still leave decisively and would not choose to stay on Zhuoxia. It's good now. Mo didn't put any pressure on him. He just threw money at him and made him willing. Isn't this love? Come in. At this moment, they saw a maintenance elevator coming down. They quickly hid aside. Mo activated the ability of radio wave shielding, which can ensure that they can shield the detection of most detectors. And Nanling also activated his breath-hiding technique and refraction to make them disappear in the naked eye. His skills are actually not good enough. The elevator door opened, and a maintenance worker with both eyes transformed into monocular telescope-style electronic eyes came out. He just whistled and walked in front of Nanling and Mo, and didn't notice that the two were standing here so carelessly. Nanling's heart beat a little faster. This feeling is really exciting. And Mo pulled him into the elevator quickly. They stood quietly and let the elevator automatically take them to the headquarters of Fenyuan Operation Company in the middle area. But after the elevator arrived, Mo just pulled Nanling to continue waiting inside, and didn't open the door immediately. Nanling heard Mo's explanation on his retina. Don't be anxious, try not to expose yourself. If we control the door from within, it will leave traces. He thought this made sense, but reminded him again. Can the young lady wait that long? Mo. They dare not do anything to Fan and I. We should actually be tracked down by Miss Fenyi. Nanling asked curiously. I believe someone wants to target Miss Fenyi. After all, she made a big fuss before, which should have cut off the financial resources of many people. But why did they choose to launch it at this time? Mo. I guess it has something to do with the planet. Nanling nodded repeatedly after listening, and then said. Then everything is connected, so they are going to find trouble with the Zhuoxia, because the Zhuoxia has a complete data backup of this matter from beginning to end, which is the legal proof that the planet currently belongs to Miss Fenyi. Then he shook his head. Sure enough, there are dirty hands everywhere. At this time, the elevator door opened, and another person took the elevator to go down. But the moment the elevator door closed, the two of them walked out quickly, and the man didn't notice anything the whole time. Because even the airflow caused by the two people walking was completely controlled by Nanling. Mo felt this and couldn't help but praise. You eliminated the airflow fluctuations, which can be regarded as making up for the last flaw in my lurking invasion. Nanling's expression was a little subtle, and he always felt that he had become a humanoid equipment. To go to the upper area, they had to change an elevator, and this elevator was much busier. Because many people live in the middle area and go to the upper area to work. And there is more than one elevator, and each elevator is very large. As long as they blend into one of them, they will have enough space to hide themselves. The elevator arrived, and the crowd walked out in twos and threes. Nanling and Mo mixed in and no one could find them. And one thing Nanling also noticed was that these people who came to the upper area should all be service personnel. They either still kept their human bodies or replaced them with very beautiful prostheses. Everything looks very beautiful, but Nanling saw another level of oppression behind this. Because all industrial production in Chunhyuan 06 is in the middle area, and the most prosperous in the upper area is the financial industry and service industry with no real output. However, the wind domain is still good, at least it leaves an upward channel for ordinary people. But there is no time to think about the social problems of this space station. The most important thing for the two now is to find Fanny and rescue her. I don't know whether this unpredictable captain lady is in a smart or confused state now. Have a happy vacation, everyone. Chapter 67. Pissing teammates. The two of them walked silently in the main building of the Golden Axis. Not sure if it was an illusion, Nanling felt that there were fewer surveillance cameras here. At least within his sight, the surveillance cameras were almost invisible. Mo took Nanling to walk slowly in the Golden Axis and explained to him, "This place has a strong signal shielding ability. Those rich people don't want their dirty deeds to be exposed, so this place will be a black hole for surveillance. For us, the difficulty becomes how to locate Fan." Nanling nodded and looked around. At this time, they had climbed more than 300 meters on the Golden Axis and were located at about 1/5 of the height of the entire upper area. Even so, he could overlook almost the entire upper area. Unlike the high-rise buildings in the middle area, this upper area is actually a mixture of mountains, lakes, deserts, coasts, and other terrains, forming a dreamlike world. The rich build manors in the forest, or mountain castles, or seaside mansions. They don't pursue high-rise buildings, which are too crowded for them. What they love to enjoy most is these man-made natural scenery and have fun in it. Nanling stood at the window of the Golden Axis, and while Mo was busy locating Fanny, he looked out into the distance and admired it, then said, "As expected, I still like the truly natural scenery. These man-made things have too many pre-programmed things." Mo took the time to glance at where his gaze was, then said lightly, "The so-called upper-class wealthy people in Chunhyuan 06 are nothing more than local rich men with some money." Nanling asked curiously, "Then what should a real wealthy person be like?" Mo glanced at him and said, "As far as I know, there is a wealthy person who owns the entire planet, but does not develop it, leaving it in ignorance. He will build a palace on the highest mountain of that planet, and then integrate the most powerful technology in the world into the palace, so that he can control the wind, rain, drought and floods of this planet in a moment." Nanling said in shock, "Is he being a god?" Mo said, "When money is just a number, of course you have to find something to satisfy their empty hearts. And the worship of the ignorant may be one of the ways." Nanling stopped talking. The top rich people of this era actually played this trick. But it seems that this can really be done, but the people living on that planet would be miserable. What is the difference between this and the livestock in captivity? Mo said, "Those ignorant people don't know that their gods are just people like them, because their life trajectories and even the development of civilization are set, everything will be kept in the dark, and after reaching a certain level, they will go to the destination they set." Nanling pondered for a moment, then said, "Massacre?" Mo said, "A war, a virus, a natural disaster, anyway, it's something like this." Nanling was still puzzled. "This kind of thing, it can't be that it happens every few decades?" Mo said, "One round every thousands of years, the most I have seen one person has played 5 rounds. Nanling was shocked when he heard it, and he said, "That person has lived for so long." Mo smiled and said, "Alive. If existing in the world completely with a mechanical brain can be considered alive, then he can be considered alive for the time being." Nanling was speechless for a long time. At this moment, a thought that had always existed in his mind could not help but come out. He said quietly, "Maybe, we are actually kept in captivity by another group of gods." Mo probably thought it was absurd and did not respond, but continued to concentrate on his work. Nanling laughed at himself and said, "Yes, if that's the case, who can use the entire Milky Way as a pen?" Mo patted his shoulder and said, "I have located it. Fanny is 500 meters above our heads. Come with me to climb the stairs. It is indeed necessary to climb the stairs. There is no other way. Fortunately, they are all well-trained people, so this floor is not a problem. It's just that there are no surveillance cameras outside, but there are surveillance cameras in the corridor. There is no other way. The corridor is used as an emergency passage, and the rich will never go there." This time, in addition to Mo's physical interference with these monitoring devices, Nanling also tried to use refraction to target them. In fact, to some extent, refraction is better than Mo's electromagnetic interference. Because no matter how physical means are used for electromagnetic interference, it will eventually leave some sense of disharmony on the device. Nanling's refraction can directly distort and refract visible light, making those devices directly invisible to them. Mo was very impressed and said, "It seems that it is necessary to train you more in this skill after this time. Now you can refract relatively few spectral bands. When you can refract most of the spectral bands evenly, then this skill can be considered to be mastered." Nanling was fascinated when he heard it, and felt that System O was his guiding light. When he felt that the self-developed skill of refraction was useless, Mo reminded him of the direction of development. The two continued to move forward, and this time Mo simply stopped using his electromagnetic interference ability, but only played a warning role, and then asked Nanling to cover their traces. What surprised Nanling was that Mo could actually judge the location and model of those monitoring devices through the differences in electromagnetic signals. And monitoring devices with different signals have different response methods, which is the key to their safe journey. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, only Mo's profound knowledge and omnipotence. The more he gets along with this woman, the more Nanling is amazed by her comprehensive skills. Fortunately, he can be of use to a certain extent now. Refraction can confuse some monitoring equipment, and some sound-sensitive monitoring can be solved by the breath-lock technique. If Mo sneaks in by himself, there is a 70% chance that he will not be discovered, then now with Nanling, there is a 90% chance that he will not be discovered. So when they climbed up 500 meters to the floor where Fanny was located, they were still not discovered. Nanling muttered, "It's going too smoothly." Mo said calmly, "Isn't it good to be smooth?" Nanling said, "If it goes too smoothly, I will always consider the worst, just in case." Mo said, "The worst case scenario is that we are discovered from the beginning, but now we are here. Even if we are discovered, we can force our way in." Nanling asked, "Can we escape if we find Fanny?" Mo shook his head and said, "No, at least I will feel at ease if I find Fanny." Nanling! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. He suddenly realized one thing, that is, Mo dragged him here seriously and professionally, but in the end, he didn't prepare any safe evacuation plan. At this moment, Nanling's brain began to work rapidly. He was inexplicably led to a ditch, and he had to save himself. Chapter 68. The defects of the intelligence core. It went smoothly, and the following things went smoothly. Nanling and Mo found the place where Fan and I was trapped without any danger, or rather, the entire level of the golden axis was a huge cage, an extremely huge illusion array. This was something that neither Mo nor Nanling had expected, that the other party actually used an illusion array to control Fan and I. But in fact, this was also true. Fan and I's identity was special. Even the senior executives of the Fen consortium who managed this Dust Fate 06 would never dare to offend her easily. Ancient Domain, that was a huge force that was not inferior to Fen Domain at all, and if there was a real quarrel, neither side would get any benefit. So the entire floor was emptied and arranged into an illusion array to trap Fan and I, which was a very pleasing way. If Ancient Domain wanted to investigate afterwards, Dust Fate 06 could completely say that it did not restrict Fan and I's personal freedom, and that she was trapped by the array after breaking into the Fen family's secret place, and it could completely turn the tables. But now a difficult problem was placed in front of the two, that is, should they destroy it violently, or find a way to crack it cleverly? Violent destruction would undoubtedly immediately raise an alarm, and such a thing should not be done if it could be avoided. If you want to crack it with clever force, you need to have a complete understanding of this formation, which is impossible to achieve in a short time. Moreover, even if you want to crack it with brute force, you need to have some understanding of this formation. Both of them were in trouble. Nanling asked, "System O, can't your ability sense the situation in this formation?" Mo shook her head and said, "I can't do it. This formation disturbs my perception. I can only know that Fan is in it, but I can't locate Fan." Nanling pondered for a while and turned on the gas perception, wanting to sense the situation in this formation. But this is a formation in the wind domain, and the airflow was turbulent. Nanling only felt that he couldn't sense any useful information at all. This is very annoying. However, vaguely, he felt that this seemed to be an opportunity for him, but he didn't know how to find this opportunity. Mo calmed down, looked at Nanling and said, "Let's enter the formation too." Nanling looked at Mo unexpectedly, and didn't understand why Mo made such a decision to fall into the trap. Mo said, "We have no way to find the flaws of this formation in a short time, and it is impossible to break it by destroying the main body of the building. If that happens, we who were originally in the right will become in the wrong. And since Fanny can't escape, we naturally can't leave. In this case, we might as well go to the formation to find Fanny. I don't know how anxious she will be if she is trapped inside." Nanling felt a bit of a tangerine feeling when he heard it. Mo said, "Are you willing to come with me?" Nanling said helplessly, You have already gone in. It will be too easy for me to be exposed outside alone, so I'd better go in with you. It is the safest for him to be with the young ladies now. Because the ruler of Chinuano 6 will not care about the life of a small person like him, but will care about the face of the young ladies. Therefore, although it seems dangerous, it is safer for them to enter the formation. Hold my hand, don't get separated. Mo suddenly reached out and held Nanling again, and they walked forward hand in hand. To be honest, this posture is a bit charming, but neither of them would have such thoughts. Because when they walked into this formation, they all realized a possibility. Did they really sneak in here without being discovered? Nanling asked. Sister Mo, do you know what the most powerful person in this space station is? Mo said. Generally speaking, there will be an elder or retainer at the peak of the Golden Core stage in charge of the place. Nanling asked. There won't be people in the Nascent Soul stage, right? To be honest, Nanling really felt a little awkward asking this question in this sci-fi background. Mo shook her head and said, who do you think the Nascent Soul Masters are? They are all beings who have truly obtained eternal life. They will only explore the mysteries of this universe and will no longer act in the secular world. Nanling thought it was too strange to hear that. Can the Nascent Soul stage be immortal? But considering that there are so many technological aids in this era, it seems that immortality is not impossible. Nanling said, in that case, we may have been discovered by the Jindan cultivator of the Fen group. Mo said, I just realized that the other party is a Jindan cultivator, so there must be a way to discover us without us noticing. And the journey was just as you said, it was too smooth. We arrived in front of this formation smoothly and put a seemingly simple choice in front of us. Nanling also understood. He wants us to destroy this formation, and then he can naturally blame him. Mo said, that's right, this is also the most important reason why I brought you into this formation. We have been discovered, so the only thing we can do is to prevent him from succeeding. Nanling understood, but he was not as pessimistic as Mo. This illusion formation looked like a forest. They walked in the forest, and everything they saw seemed real and unreal. This made them dare not even let go of their hands, because, in Nanling's field of vision, even Mo's shadow had been lost. He held Mo's hand tightly and said, is my vision affected here? There was no response, which made Nanling suspect that his hearing was also affected. It was so close, but he couldn't see or hear anything. How terrible was that? Even the touch on his hand was about to disappear, which made him subconsciously clench his palm, trying to grasp the last touch. At this moment, he felt a sharp pain in his right earlobe. He subconsciously covered it with his hand, and his eyes were already blurry. Then a line of system text appeared on his retina. Warning, Xiphon type the third intelligent core is offline, please check the status of the intelligent core immediately. Nanling realized that his intelligent core had been pulled down. But before he could panic, he found Mo's figure appeared in front of him again, and heard her faint voice. Now, can you hear me talking? Nanling nodded. Then he realized something and quickly let go of his hand. But he saw Mo calmly pulled back her hand and moved it a little, and then said, you squeezed it really tightly just now. Nanling was embarrassed. Then he suddenly realized something and said, did this illusion just invade my intelligence core? Mo nodded and said, if not, how could it have such a strong effect? This is a dual illusion that acts on the human brain and the intelligence core. If it simply acts on the human brain, it will only make it difficult for people to distinguish directions and unable to get out, but if it is targeted at the intelligence core, it will make you truly deaf and blind, and you will be immersed in the illusion space and unable to extricate yourself. Nanling was still frightened, and he said, I have long known that the intelligence core is unreliable, but I didn't expect it to be so unreliable. As he said this, Mo threw the bloody Xiphon type the third intelligence core to Nanling and said, I'll give it back to you. Next time, remember to make it into a necklace or something else that is easy to wear, so that I won't tear your ears apart again next time. There seemed to be some apology in his tone. Nanling gently wiped the blood off his ear, and then said, I know. He was actually a little restrained in front of Mo. After all, this was the woman who almost tore off his ear. She was super fierce. His earlobes were torn, but fortunately, these minor injuries could be repaired when he returned. However, the bleeding was a bit scary. However, just when he wanted to treat the injury, he suddenly felt that his gaseous perception sensed something different. The intelligence core not only blocked his normal vision and hearing, but also confused his perception of the airflow. Now that he took off the intelligence core, he immediately felt the unusual airflow in the formation space. Although it still looked messy, it was no longer chaotic. This formation could disrupt the intelligence core, but it could not disrupt his own perception. He realized that he could actually use his perception to try to find a way out. Anyway, there was no other way now. Chapter 69. The split IMIS. It was no accident that Nanling was able to detect the abnormality of the airflow here, but his own wind control technique had reached the level of LV8. It seemed that the interference of this formation on the airflow was also at the level of LV8, which made Nanling discover the clue. To be honest, after getting used to the convenience brought by the intelligence core, this was the first time he left the intelligence core and relied on his own ability to perform gas perception. Without the high computing power of the intelligence core to integrate information for him, he could only use his brain to summarize the information brought by the airflow. His brain was running at high speed, his eyes narrowed slightly, but his pupils were constantly shrinking and dilating, as if countless information flashed in them. Mo noticed this. She saw Nanling suddenly stopped moving, and a look of surprise appeared on her face. Then she saw that the torn wound on Nanling's earlobe was still bleeding. Her face was a little apologetic. She fumbled around, and took out a medical spray. She carefully lifted the torn earlobe and sprayed some spray on it. The cold touch woke Nanling up, and he saw Mo leaning in front of him, which surprised him greatly. Mo calmly took his hand away and stepped back 2 steps, saying, "Although I don't want to disturb you, since you're still bleeding, I think this is more urgent." Nanling felt the coldness of his earlobe and the pain relief effect, and said to Mo, "Thank you, I'm much better now." Mo breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Did you find anything?" Nanling nodded and said, "Yes, the interference with the airflow here is the level of LV8 wind control. I think I can break it through this." Mo was really surprised. She didn't expect Nanling to have such ability. After all, if you want to avoid being disturbed by the LV8 wind control, you must have at least LV8 wind control yourself. She knows a lot of such geniuses, but it is really unique for someone like Nanling to be able to do this in the key refining stage. This made her have to be surprised. The direct bloodline of the Feng family rarely can do this, right? At this time, Nanling was fully devoted to perception. His LV8 was not improved by the wisdom core, but he reached this step completely with his own understanding. There are many details that are different from the LV8 wind control that comes with the wisdom core. It was precisely this difference in details that made him feel something very subtle. That is, the opponent's LV8 wind control technique and his LV8 wind control technique of the intelligence core have the same origin, so he can see many characteristics at a glance. Under such circumstances that he knows the opponent so well but the opponent does not know him, or the opponent is just an intelligent system similar to the intelligence core, he vaguely found a pattern of the opponent's interference. Sensing the airflow, eliminating the opponent's interference on the airflow, and then finding the real source of these airflows, this is what Nanling is doing at this time. Without the assistance of the intelligence core, he must analyze, summarize and search for this process bit by bit. With his whole heart and soul, he soon became mentally exhausted and a little dazed. And it was in this situation that he forgot the rules he had summarized before, and then his consciousness naturally drifted along the airflow around him. He was like blending into a breeze, drifting in this illusion space, and then seeing many contents in this space clearly. Until one moment, he saw 2 young ladies beating each other's chests and pulling each other's hair. "It's Miss Fanny and Miss Fenny." Nanling suddenly woke up and said. Mo was surprised and said, "Can you really find them?" Nanling said, "You can try." He felt that he could do it. Because after coming out of the state of blending into the wind just now, he found that his thoughts seemed to be able to blend into the wind at any time. He even felt that he was immersed in the wind all the time, and he could hold the wind in his hands with a casual grab. This feeling was too wonderful, and he knew that his wind control technique must have broken through the realm again. Mo did not question anything, but just said, "You'll lead the way." Nanling nodded and walked quickly forward in the illusion array. He found that his perception was now easier and more intuitive, and he did not need to summarize a large amount of information at all. He could see through those distorted appearances and see the essence directly. Mo followed closely behind him, and a glimmer appeared in her eyes. Perhaps for her, she finally had a reliable helper, and she could breathe a sigh of relief. Not long after, the 2 of them came to the 2 young ladies. However, the image of these 2 young ladies at this time, how to say it, Nanling was a little worried that she might be silenced. "Unlucky guy, you have really harmed me this time. It's really bad luck wherever I go, and I'm unlucky wherever I get involved." Fenyi complained while pulling Fanna's hair. Fanna said angrily, "You are putting the blame on me. It is obvious that I was hurt by your Fenman man. You can't even tell whether the people around you are in the same mind as you. You are so stupid." Fenyi snorted coldly and said, "He is no longer my housekeeper. I fired him when you left." Fanny laughed and said, "That's right, you fired him, and he immediately joined your disappointing brother and sued you for embezzlement of public funds. This is really interesting. Now we're trapped here. I guess they have prepared everything they should have. Do you think you will be sold as a flannel ball to pay off your debts after we are released?" Fenyi immediately glared at her, then tried to pounce on her and said, "You unlucky guy, you are so sharp-tongued, you should be sold as a flannel ball." As he said that, he was about to tear Fanny's clothes. The interaction between these two young ladies is really white. Nanling was a little dazzled. As a result, Mo stood in front of him with a cold face, blocking his sight. Then he coughed dryly, reminding the two young ladies who were tearing each other's clothes to wake up, because someone was coming. Fanny and Fenna stopped and turned their heads to look over. When they saw Mo and Nanling, they stood up with a start, and at the same time, they silently tidied their clothes, trying to restore their elegance. However, Fanny didn't have any idle baggage after all. After confirming that her clothes would still be messy after tidying them up, she threw herself on Mo and said, "Mo, I knew you wouldn't abandon me." She showed a pitiful look. Fenna reluctantly tidied her clothes. Although they were still messy, her temperament was restored. She sighed and said, "Fanny, at times like this I envy you for having such a loyal follower." Fanny sneered and said, "Mo is a good sister who grew up with me. She is more than just a follower." Mo rubbed Fanny's head and said, "Okay, don't let Shion laugh at you." Fanny then came out of Mo's arms and saw Nanling. She first stuck out her tongue at him, and then realized that she was the boss, so she frowned and said, "Why are you here too?" Nanling tried his best to act like a wooden man and didn't want to stand out at all. Mo said, "If it weren't for Shion, I wouldn't have found you." Fanny then said seriously, "Thank you." Fenyi shook his hair, looked at Nanling and said, "I didn't expect that I really introduced such an outstanding talent to Fanny. If you are willing, I just happen to be short of someone by my side now." Fanny became anxious when she heard it, and she said, "Fenman man, you were about to be sold to a brothel, and you actually want to poach people around me." Seeing that the two young ladies were about to quarrel again, Mo hurriedly grabbed Fanny and said to Fenyi apologetically, "I'm sorry, Miss Fenyi, Shonan is an indispensable person for us, please understand. In addition, I think the most important thing now is how to deal with this matter." At this time, Fanny suddenly frowned slightly, and then sneered. "Don't worry, as long as we can get out of this formation, they dare not do anything to us. They don't even dare to really activate the power of this formation." As she said that, she looked at Nanling and said, "If you can find us in the formation, are you sure you can take us out?" Nanling looked at Fanny, whose leadership suddenly burst out, and felt that this woman was schizophrenic, right? Chapter 70 Good Circle. Nanling became the key to the young lady's breakthrough. "I can't believe that I, a legitimate daughter of the Feng family, have not gone as far as you in the wind control technique." Fenyi could no longer understand Nanling at this time. What on earth was going on? Seeing her puzzled, Nanling simply expressed her guess. "I think this may be because I spent a lot of time accumulating Lingzhu points to buy the 3-piece set, which allowed me to have LV8 wind control technique before I got the wisdom core." Fenyi nodded and agreed with this point of view. "That's true. Now I think about it. Since I started practicing as a child, I have been receiving assistance from the 3-piece set. Although I have also relied on my own efforts to practice the wind control technique to LV8, that was completely completed within the framework of the wisdom core's standard answer. Now it has become very difficult even if I want to exceed this framework." Fenyi said very eloquently and rationally, then turned his head to look at Nanling and said, "But I am confused, how did you manage to practice the wind control technique to this level by relying on your own ability?" This is the key point that Fenyi is entangled with. How could Nanling have the LV8 wind control skill so well without the assistance of the 3-piece set? This is incredible. Fanny laughed and said, "Is it only your Feng family that can produce a genius of the wind system, and it is not allowed for the common people to have a genius with genetic mutation?" She was happy with this. Nanling didn't want to talk more about this, because when he first installed the auxiliary device, he knew that there was a problem with his bloodline and it was produced through genetic adjustment. These big families attach great importance to their own genetic information and will never want to leak this key genetic information. Fortunately, Fanny is his good boss, and Miss Fenyi is down and out. He began to think in his heart, it seems that selling Fenyi to a brothel is also a good idea. Just when he was harboring malicious intent, he finally took everyone out of the formation space. It seems to be an understatement, but in fact, this formation has not been activated at all. This is a tacit understanding between the upper class, and nothing will be done to the extreme. Fen Yi didn't have time to think about Nanling's problem at this time. She said to Fan and I hurriedly, "Okay, let's say goodbye. I'm going to contact my old subordinates and hope to save the situation." Fan and I snorted coldly and said, "Then you have to work hard. Don't let your careless brother really cheat you. You still owe me 3 billion yuan. Fen Yi paused, sighed, and said, "You don't have to tell me about this." As she said that, she swayed slightly to the side, and the whole person merged into the air like green smoke, and then disappeared. Nanling looked at it again and again in surprise. He was sure that this was definitely a high-level wind technique that he didn't know. It was a pity that he couldn't exchange it. Fan and I pushed him and said, "Don't look at it. Let's go too. I just want to get back to my ship as soon as possible." She looked a little tired and was obviously in a bad mood. It seemed that she was also scared this time, but she didn't show it because of face. As for how to go back, just walk back so carelessly. This is tacit understanding. No one came to stop the three of them from returning. Nanling asked at this time, "Sister Mo, when did the Jinnan stationed in this space station discover us?" Mo said, "I think we were discovered when we reached that level. Otherwise they would definitely send people to stop this. My identity alone cannot make them compromise." Nanling nodded. "Yes, since the other party has used her formation to besiege Miss Fanny, they will definitely pay attention to this side." Fanny said at this time, "Okay, you don't have to call me Miss in the future, just call me Fanny in private." Nanling scratched his cheek and said, "This doesn't seem good, right?" Mo said lightly, "Fanny wants to be friends with you, you have completely gained her trust." Nanling was surprised. But Mo suddenly said, "But I don't trust you that much." Nanling felt a little blocked in her heart and asked, "Why?" Mo said, "It's the same question as Fen Yi. Fan and I can ignore it, but I have to care about it." Nanling was stunned, then took a deep breath and asked, "Then I leave?" Mo shook her head and said, "I'm not driving you away, it's just," she wanted to continue, but Fan and I interrupted her and said, "Don't worry about it. I believe Xiaonan didn't come to me with bad intentions. That's enough." Fan and I stretched out her hands, holding Mo with one hand and Nanling with the other, and put their hands together and said, "You obviously cooperated so well this time, how can you be suspicious of each other? Now you are all my friends, I don't want to see my friends quarreling with each other." She said it very seriously. It must be said that Fan and I, who is not childish, has a charming charm. Even her childishness is a kind of charm. Nanling and Mo put their hands together, they looked at each other, and didn't speak for a while. Mo was too embarrassed to speak first, while Nanling had a bit of a temper. After all, who doesn't have a temper? However, Nanling thought about it and finally decided that she needed the Zhuoxiao platform, so she could only speak first to make peace. Can I still use your gym?" Mo's tense face relaxed a little, and she nodded. Nanling thought she would stop talking, but she waited for a while and then said, "Your training plan is a bit simple, I will help you look at it when the time comes." Nanling was surprised, and felt something strange in his heart. According to his life experience in the lower class area, when the rift between people appears, there is only one way to break up. But he found that in Mo and Fanny, they just wanted to make up for the rift. Nanling once again lamented the importance of the circle. When he was weak, in that weak circle, everything around him looked so bad, everyone was waiting for him to be weak, and then swallowed him up. But now that he has climbed up, in this circle of young ladies, everything around him looks so beautiful. He smiled awkwardly and let go of his grudges. To be honest, he didn't blame Mo. After all, if he put himself in Mo's shoes, he would be even more suspicious. But who made him not know his own life experience? Fanny smiled and put her arms around their shoulders. She was very happy that her two friends could reach a reconciliation. When they left the Golden Axis smoothly and got on the airship to the airport, they resumed communication with the Zhuoxia. Li Ji's voice rang out in the communication. "Finally I got in touch with you. It seems that everything is going well over there, and I have also settled my affairs here." Fanny did not ask what was going on over there, but took the lead to express her sincere gratitude. "Sister Li Ji, thank you very much." Li Ji was stunned for a moment, then smiled comfortingly and said, "Why thank me, I am the second mate to this ship. Of course I have to take responsibility when the captain and the first mate are not here." Fanny laughed and said, "I am so happy today, because I finally found a place that is much better than Fen Yi's stupid goose. She only has one subordinate, and he betrayed her. And I have 3 good friends who I can completely trust. I am so lucky. This little mouth is so sweet." It is undeniable that Nanling was very happy after hearing this. Whether it was said deliberately or out of sincerity, in Nanling's opinion, Fanny is indeed a rare good boss. Chapter 71. Forced to start a new journey. When they returned to the airport, the people who had surrounded the Vuoxia had dispersed. Li Ji had done her job well and protected the rights of the Vuoxia from being violated. Fanny sat on the bridge tiredly. She said, "Let me report our current situation first." Mo stepped out first and said, 1 billion Lingzhu points have been received, and 6.7 billion of the original 9 billion quota has been exchanged. The last batch of materials worth 1 billion has not yet arrived. Fanny nodded and said, "Does that mean there is still a gap of 2.3 billion? Don't keep it. If you like any blueprint or technology of this space station, just exchange it directly, and don't worry about whether it is useful or not." Mo was not vague at all. She immediately pulled Nanling and said, "Come with me. Let's see if there is anything we need and exchange it." As she said this, she seemed to be afraid that Nanling would not understand the meaning, so she emphasized it specially. For example, Xuanfengzhuo high-level wind techniques. It seems that this is useless to us, but it can still be kept as a knowledge reserve. Anyway, use up all the quotas if you can. Do you understand? How could Nanling not understand? This is a blatant benefit for him. He is the only cultivator with wind attribute on this ship. Isn't it a bargain for him to buy it back? Although it would not be given away for free, according to the exchange rules of this spaceship, he had already taken advantage of it. Nanling got the authority and immediately selected all the wind-related skills that he could search for on Chunyuan 06 and confirmed the exchange. Mo was not polite either. Wind and thunder were inseparable. There were also many thunder-attributed combat skills and spells that were worth learning from. In just such an exchange, not only wind skills and wind spells, but also various technical drawings, whether useful or not, everyone started to buy together. Because these are all connected in real time, basically you can get a response if you ask for an exchange. The last batch of goods also began to arrive, and Nanling divided some of his energy to operate the robot to receive the goods. Although it seems calm now, the 3 people who were actually working on the ship are busy. Li Ji is also busy. She entered the intelligence system of Chunyuan 06 and bought intelligence on a large scale. These intelligences are not displayed in the normal information network and can be regarded as secrets. This process lasted for half a day. Suddenly, the trading rights between Vuoxia and the space station were completely blocked. The remaining 80 million transaction amount was frozen. At this moment, everyone on the bridge looked up at this scene and frowned. Fanny stopped laughing and became serious. She connected Fengyi's communication. "You're lost?" Fanny asked. But she was still relieved. At least her good friend's communication was still connected. Fengyi's somewhat tired voice sounded, "I didn't win, but it's not a loss either. It's a lose-lose situation." Fanny stood up from the captain's seat, paced 2 steps and said, "It's good that I didn't lose. I should have lost my military position, right?" Fengyi said, "You know everything." Fanny sneered. "Who is like you, a fool? You'll look smart, but you are actually a reckless man. It is inevitable that you will lose your military position. After all, after the previous purge, many people are afraid that you will still stay in that military position." Fengyi was silent for a moment, then said coldly, "I will be back." Fanny laughed and said, "It sounds like a villain's line." Fengyi said, "The planet you sold to me is now the key to my comeback. Fanny, I need your help." Fanny said lightly, "How much do you need?" Fengyi said, "Give me 3 billion, which will be your 40% stake." Fanny chuckled and said, "This is not a small amount of money. You want me to invest in a planet that is destined to be swallowed by a white dwarf?" Fengyi said, "It will be safe for at least 1,000 years. The output of 1,000 years is enough to repay your investment and make you a lot of money." Fanny calmly looked at Fengyi on the communication screen. Fengyi also looked back calmly. However, the next moment, Fengyi was suddenly moved. Fanny smiled and said, "Although I don't care much about this money, this is all the savings I have now. I hope that when we meet again next time, you'll have stood up again." Fengyi didn't say much, just nodded heavily, and then entered the communication. Fanny hung up that communication and laughed. She said, "Now I am penniless." Mo comforted, but the supplies on the Vuoxia have basically arrived. If you really count, we are not at a disadvantage. Fanny didn't say anything, but she seemed to be in a good mood. Nanling looked at Fanny's performance and once again confirmed that her boss was indeed a good girl. At this time, Fanny looked at everyone and said, "In this case, we can't stay in this space station anymore. Let's think about where to go next. I originally wanted to stay here for a while, but I didn't expect to be forced to embark on a pioneering journey so soon. To be honest, it's quite frustrating to encounter such a thing," but under Fanny's words, everyone felt full of energy. Nanling looked at Li Ji and said, "Aunt Li Ji, you brought so much information, you must have some insights, right?" Li Ji nodded and said, "To be honest, according to the current state of our spacecraft, I suggest that we should find another docking point for further maintenance. After all, the newly installed landing module has only been installed on this ship, and no functional debugging and expansion optimization have been carried out. There are also many ship upgrade plans that are halfway through, and it takes time to perfect them." This is a mature statement, which made Nanling blush a little, because this is all his job, and Li Ji shouldn't say it. Fanny waved her hand and said, "You're right, but although we are affected, we are probably not welcome in the wind region. Xiaonan, are the supplies of the Zhuoxia enough to sustain long-distance flights now?" Nanling nodded and said, "There is no problem within a span of 30,000 light-years. This can directly cross half of the Milky Way. But this is normal, after all, this is the most advanced hunting ship in the world." Fanny nodded and said, "Okay, then we will go directly to Tianzeng Star." Everyone was shocked at first, and then they felt that this was in line with Fanny's personality. Tianzeng Star is a planet belonging to the pioneers of all mankind. There are countless intelligence gathering there, and countless pioneering tasks are issued. Fanny's ambition is the same as many idle second-generation ancestors, that is, to be a pioneer who can experience countless thrills. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 72. Hyperspace Hunter Zhuoxia sent a request to leave the port, which was approved at the fastest speed, and then slowly drove out of the airport. It is estimated that the senior management of the space station wanted to force Zhuoxia to leave the port. Nanling returned to his room and prepared to went to the hyperspace jump. Speaking of which, he had to play games with Fanny again, and he was looking forward to it. After all, the Galaxy Past series is really worth learning. The hyperspace active group became active again, but this time Fanny did not mention anything about playing games, but seriously dragged Mo and Nanling to practice. This was very surprising. A virtual training ground was opened, and you can practice spellcasting, fighting, etc. Anyway, Nanling is always the one who gets beaten. It's pretty miserable. Tianzeng Star is more than 3,000 light-years away from Chenyuan 06 space station, so it will probably take a year to get there by stopping and starting. The main thing is that you can't fly there in one breath, but you have to slow down after 30 or 40 days of hyperspace flight, otherwise the human body can't withstand the state of hyperspace freezing for a long time. However, this time, they had just flown in hyperspace for 3 days when a shrill alarm suddenly sounded on the ship. However, the cabin was empty and the alarm could not make the members on the ship leave their bedrooms. Fanny, Mo and Nanling were stunned at the same time, and then they immediately appeared on the bridge. At this time, they could only exist and move in the form of projection. When their consciousness was just connected to the bridge, Zhuoxia reported quickly, "Captain, we're locked." Fanny said coldly, "We're jumping in hyperspace, how can we be locked?" At this moment, a heavy footstep appeared outside the bridge. They were stunned to see the door of the bridge open, and Li Ji staggered here, rubbing her head. The first thing she did when she entered the door was not to look at the situation here, and ask directly, "Zhuoxia, what's going on?" Li Ji's consciousness also woke up in the hyperspace, or was it still awakened by the alarm? Zhuoxia replied, "There is a spaceship tracking us in the hyperspace, it is very close." Li Ji was surprised, obviously she had never encountered such a thing. Fanny was quite calm. She said, "It's meaningless to discuss who it is now. If the other party can track us in hyperspace, then there must be a positioning device on our spacecraft." Li Ji was surprised to see the projections of the 3 people around her. She didn't expect that there would be someone else who could wake up in hyperspace besides herself. Nanling nodded to her but didn't say hello. Instead, he expressed his opinion and said, "There is no problem with the purchase this time. I have checked it. In fact, we can look at this problem further." His reminder was very timely. Mo immediately realized that the appearance of the plunderer fleet in our last adventure was suspicious. Luigi nodded, and then said, I will be responsible for finding the person. In fact, when I found that I could rely on the super brain to control my body to stand up, I had narrowed the scope of suspicion to a very narrow extent. Nanling immediately said, be careful. I will give you the authority of the new compact robot. Don't capsize in the gutter. Luigi nodded. Her condition was indeed not good at the moment. The weakness of the biological brain still troubled her, making her stand a little unstable. She left in a hurry and reunited with the robot that Nanling had given her. Fanny nodded with relief, and then said, now there is a more serious problem. How should we deal with the ship that is tracking us? As soon as she'd finished speaking, the alarm on the bridge sounded again, and then Xiaoxia said, it is found that our ship is being locked by the enemy's fire control system. Please prepare for the impact. Nanling's mind quickly connected to the various detection equipment of the Xiaoxia, but most of the detection equipment in hyperspace was invalid, and the only useful one was optical observation. However, the hyperspace in the optical observation was a distorted and chaotic scene. Nanling felt dizzy after just one look. It was beyond the computing power of the intelligence core. Mo saw that his projection showed an uncomfortable look, as if he knew what he had just done. She said, hyperspace is not something that we can observe at this level. Fanny can barely do it, but it mainly depends on Xiaoxia's assistance. Nanling finally understood. But he had a question. Who are the people on that ship? Are they masters on the ship? To be able to maintain consciousness in hyperspace requires a cultivation level of about Jindan, which is not for ordinary people. Although Nanling's team now has many masters, Fanny and Mo are both outstanding people who have received elite education. At a young age, they have walked a path that others may not be able to walk in their lifetime. How can a true strong person be found so easily? Fanny did not answer, but responded quickly. Prepare to eject from hyperspace, open the shield to the maximum, and everyone prepare to accept the impact. She did not choose to fight back, but decided to run away decisively. Boom. The whole ship shook all of a sudden. They have been hit. Because the Xiaoxia itself does not have much monitoring ability in hyperspace, even when it was hit, it seemed very abrupt. The shield energy has been reduced by half, and it can still withstand a blow. Mo quickly reported the situation. Fanny said decisively, leave hyperspace. In fact, it is very dangerous to force a breakout like this. No one knows where they will land if they suddenly rush out. Seeing that the spaceship suddenly stopped and was about to leave hyperspace. Unexpectedly, another strong energy flow came from the hyperspace and bombarded the Xiaoxia. Damn, it's a dual main gun starship. This second consecutive shot directly shattered the shield of the Xiaoxia, exposing the hull of the Xiaoxia directly to the terrible energy flow in the hyperspace. Fortunately, this hunting ship had considered this situation when it was first designed. The hull withstood this huge twisting force, and then was thrown out of the hyperspace by this torrent. This is also a good thing, that is, under the influence of this energy flow, even the people on the Xiaoxia themselves could not determine where they fell, let alone those pursuers. And this degree of shock could not affect everyone's judgment. Nanling's cautious attribute was triggered, and before she could see clearly where she and others fell, she immediately suggested, we must block all signals immediately, otherwise they will catch up again. Mo immediately nodded and said, I will handle this matter, Shonen, go and see how Sister Luigi is doing. Boom. Boom. However, another series of violent collisions interrupted her words. Countless pieces of rubble were hitting the surface of the Xiaoxia. The Xiaoxia's shield had long been gone, and now it was just the hull that was resisting. Unfortunately, they were in an asteroid belt at this moment. In a short moment, the hull was damaged everywhere, and even the super-standard armor at the hunting ship could not withstand the impact of high-speed driving. Fanny said solemnly, activate the backup energy, start the silent flame array, and speed up. How to say it, this is really reckless. Chapter 73 Firefighting Support. Nanling hurriedly regained consciousness and returned to his body, because he also had serious matters to deal with. There were cracks in the cabin where he was. There was no way to solve this problem, as the continuous collisions had already caused cracks in many cabins. Other places could be solved by temporarily sealing the cabins, but if he didn't deal with it properly, he would be dead. Fortunately, at this time, the Xiaoxia had already activated a very magical formation, which was the method of a cultivator. The rooms of fire surrounded the entire spacecraft, and all the asteroids that hit it were rapidly vaporized under the burning of these fire rooms. Even if they didn't have time to vaporize, they would be melted into debris in a very short time. This was the Silent Flame Room formation, which was named because it was a flame that burned silently in space and could burn everything. This was also that first time that Nanling saw the result of combining the power of a cultivator with a starship. Looking at the gorgeous and dreamy arc of fire outside the broken porthole next to his cabin, he was a little dazed. If his room hadn't started to leak there, he really wouldn't be able to come back to his senses for a while. However, this time he did not use wind pressure to block the crack as he did when he escaped from OB 7561, but immediately put on the Hurricane inner armor. This set of inner armor, which has been constantly optimized, has almost cost all his current savings, and he will have to continue to spend until the whole set of Hurricane armor is built. At this time, he did not waste energy on blocking the cracks. He also had to go to see the situation of Aunt Liji. Liji was actually in a bad situation at this time. She underestimated the strength of an excellent retired sergeant, especially when this retired sergeant had the help of 2 former colleagues who were unaware of the situation. Liji brought 10 armed robots to capture the former White Feather Sergeant CK, who was the most suspicious person. Originally, it would not be so troublesome to capture him in hyperspace, but Liji never expected that they would be forced out of hyperspace so quickly, which also allowed CK to find the shelter of his former comrades in OMS in the first place. Liji said, "I'll say it once. Our whereabouts have been leaked. A powerful enemy is chasing us. The person who leaked our whereabouts is CK. You are shielding the criminal." Gambler Deng Joshua still stopped in front of Liji and said, "Don't joke. How could CK be a traitor? It's more credible for you to say that I am a traitor." The unlucky man Tauki stood quietly beside him, but his position was enough to express his position. These 3 people are indeed more likely to share the same hatred. Liji was quite impatient when she saw this. She knew that the Zhuoxia could be said to have been expelled from Chenyuan 06, and the 3 former Bayou sergeants became even more unreliable. She knew that she had to control the suspect as soon as possible before explaining it, otherwise there would be more trouble. So she simply commanded the combat robots to attack and capture CK. However, CK's 2 colleagues did not watch and actually fought back. At this time, CK also took out a very powerful invasion ability, and actually hacked into and plundered the control of the 3 combat robots in front of Liji. Coupled with the fact that the 2 helpers were not weak in combat, Liji was suddenly in a rather troublesome disadvantage. It was obvious that Liji had left some room for maneuver when dealing with Deng Joshua and Tauki, which caused the 2 to involve many robots attacks. In this situation, CK, who was controlling 3 combat robots, suddenly attacked, controlling the robots to block the surrounding attacks with a life-threatening posture, and then rushed towards Liji. Liji was somewhat unprepared for this, as she was not a combat talent before. At this time, she quickly used the combat skills loaded in her super brain and stretched out her hand to block. However, a sharp sword blade suddenly popped out from CK's palm and pierced into Liji's blocking arm, and accurately cut off the control component of Liji's arm. This made Liji's arm below the forearm unresponsive. Liji did not care about this, but swung her arm to throw away the sword blade, and then opened one side of her hip, and her other intact hand immediately took out a shotgun-style energy pistol for close-range killing. With a twist of his wrist, he pressed the muzzle and fired a shot. Bang! CK's body shook violently, and then he turned sideways and kicked the gun out of Liji's hand. Obviously, Liji's combat experience was overwhelmed, and she was unable to aim at a more vital part, so she disarmed her after the opponent withstood a shot, and missed the chance to turn the tables. Seeing the strong sense of oppression brought to her by the opponent, Liji finally suppressed her shame and used the second backhand that Nanling gave her. The 2 round breasts on her chest suddenly opened, revealing 2 dark muzzles. Then the chest laser shot. It was really shameful. I shouldn't have agreed to this kind of transformation for that kid. But it must be said that Liji's transformation successfully saved the situation. This time, the 2 shots were aimed directly at CK's head. After the 2 shots, 2 large holes appeared in his head. However, what was horrifying was that when there were 2 holes in his head, he could still move normally. When Nanling arrived, he saw the 2 holes on CK's head suddenly attacking. Is this man's brain still there? Nanling didn't have time to be surprised. At this time, he was still some distance away from Liji, so he could only shout, "I'm coming." Liji was terrified when the other party rushed up and was about to hit her head, and she thought she was going to die. As a result, she heard Nanling's voice at this critical moment, and then decisively made the final response. She leaned back slightly, as if to avoid CK's attack, but the next moment her head ejected in the direction of Nanling. Well, if the prosthesis is compared to a vehicle, it would be normal to have an ejection escape function. What's more, Li Ji can eject her brain again when she is in a hurry. CK was indeed stunned for a moment, but then he chased after him, shook off Li Ji's prosthesis that was blocking him, and then opened the palm of his other hand to reveal a light cannon. At this time, Nanling finally arrived. He reached out and took Li Ji's head in his hand. The palm cannon of CK behind him suddenly made a bold decision. He responded with refraction. He originally practiced this as an invisibility technique, but at this moment he suddenly felt that he could do more, relying on his wind control technique that had reached level 9 and the spiritual power control that had completely surpassed the wisdom core constant power. The air in front of Nanling suddenly twisted, and the palm cannon landed on the air in front of him, instantly refracting hundreds of tiny beams of light in all directions. Many of these beams fell on the bulkheads on both sides, leaving a little scorch mark, and some fell on Nanling's hurricane inner armor. Li Ji's head was protected in Nanling's arms, and the light spots scattered on the made black inner armor popped out little spots of light. Then Nanling reached behind his back and pulled out a shotgun. This shotgun is very distinctive in form, with a black base and a green rune surrounding it. The gun head has no tassel, but there is a hollow ring between the gun head and the gun barrel. This was the weapon that Nanling had spent his last savings on of Dust Fate 06, called the Spirit Spear Collapse Storm. It was still not a complete version, as he had not bought the matching spirit core of the ring on the spearhead, so he could not bring out its full power. He took a step forward, pointed his short spear forward, and already had a momentum that penetrated everything. The wind contract was a spear technique that matched the spirit power, and at this time, the spirit power was extremely powerful. But CK did not give up, or he knew that he could not stop at this time. Zhao Thong's palm cannon charged and fired again, and finally fired another attack before Nanling's Collapse Storm Spirit Spear arrived. His psychological quality was really amazing, and it could even be said that he was as stable as a robot. However, at this moment, the weapon on the technological side was defeated by the ability of the cultivation side. The spirit power on the Collapse Storm Spirit Spear gathered, and the spear tip directly penetrated the energy light bullet, and then shattered it. Then the spear tip continued to move forward, and pierced through CK's mechanical arm. It penetrated and then pulled out without any pause. Nanling felt extremely happy. This was the benefit of having a good weapon. Chapter 74 Forced Hard Landing. Nanling shot out and put away his gun, and then disabled one of CK's mechanical arms. At this time, the combat dagger on CK's other arm also stacked over. Nanling quickly shot out again, and with his swift momentum, he was the first to arrive. He lightly scratched the inside of the arm, and the spiritual power penetrated and destroyed its energy pipeline. With Nanling's current vision and experience, he might not be able to distinguish the structure of the prosthetic torso, but the structure of the limbs was clear at a glance. Just like that, both of CK's arms were disabled. But he did not stop, and his whole body rushed forward, as if ready to fight to the death. However, Nanling fired 2 more shots in a row, one at his throat and one at his lower abdomen. These were the 2 energy nodes he judged. The lower abdomen was the key to the energy transmission of the legs, and the throat was the head. The head was not a vital point. According to Nanling's understanding, this prosthetic should have integrated all the observation functions in the head. So the damage to the head only destroyed part of the observation function, but not the central nervous system. But now the whole head was without power, and CK really became a deaf mute and stood there without knowing what to do. His hands and feet could not move, and his head was without power. No matter where CK's central intelligence was, he was like being locked in a tin can, and had completely lost his ability to move. But the other 2 former White Feather Sergeants were not satisfied with this. They attacked angrily, determined to take back their companions. Nanling would certainly not let them attack, and he directly used the wind pressure technique on the 2 people who were not so suspicious. He stood there, and immediately a strong gust of wind swept past him on both sides, and then hit Ding Xiaoshu and Taoqi like a tornado. Hurricane roaring technique. How could you have such a high-level wind technique? Ding Xiaoshu felt that he couldn't understand it. This level of wind technique is generally mastered by those in the foundation establishment stage, but the young man in front of him is only in the key refining stage, right? Of course, what Nanling used was not the hurricane roar, but the simple wind pressure technique, which was enhanced to the extreme by the LV9 wind control technique. These 2 people were also practitioners, although their talents were not so good and they did not go so thoroughly. They used their own spiritual power to try to create wind pressure to resist, but the problem was that the pitiful wind pressure they created was quickly destroyed by Nanling's wind pressure technique, and all resistance was destroyed. Their spiritual power was simply vulnerable to Nanling's spiritual power. Then they were hit by 2 hurricanes and flew backwards, and hit the wall behind them heavily. There were also 3 out-of-control robots, and Li Ji also took back control of them by counter-invasion. When Nanling saw the 3 robots that turned against him, he felt that it was no wonder that Fana didn't like robots, because robots were too easy to be hacked and then turned against him. Nanling couldn't help but think seriously. Now everyone on the ship has at least a smart core or a super brain. His idea of using robots as guards was effective before, but it may not be effective now. At least with the computing power of his wind-weaving intelligence core, it has no advantage over Laomu's super brain transformation, let alone other things. If the robots were handed over to Li Ji, she could also build a firewall for the robots, and at the very least, she could detect that the robots were hacked. He thought too much and felt that he could not solve the security problem of this ship at the same time. At this time, Mo's voice came from the communication. Things have come to this point. Ding and Tao, if you want to withdraw now, there is no way. We will let you go free after we get through this difficult time. Ding Xiaoxue was stunned for a moment, then asked, "Is there really a problem with CK?" Mo said, "The last time in that Capen galaxy, including this time when we were attacked in hyperspace, it was all information transmitted by him." Taoqi also asked incomprehensibly, "But why is this?" Mo said, "We can only know after interrogation. Third Officer Nan, you go back to the material warehouse first. The situation there is not optimistic and needs to be repaired immediately. Second Officer Li Ji, the interrogation work is left to you. Be careful and don't take the risk of getting into his mind and falling into any logical trap." Li Ji asked in confusion, "How can I get intelligence without reading the information in his mind?" Mo went straight to the source and said, "He is just a small figure. In comparison, our goal of directly troublesome the Death Star pirates is clearer." Mo said, "The only thing I am curious about is why the Death Star pirates are staring at us. But this curiosity is not strong, so it doesn't matter if it can't be satisfied." Li Ji nodded and said, "I understand." Then she took the robots that she had recontrolled and took the CK prosthesis that had been completely destroyed by Nanling to a studio. Ding Xiaoxue and Taoqi looked at Nanling with some fear, because the ability that Nanling showed made them feel afraid. Although such a face-to-face close-range combat would hardly happen on the battlefield, their sense of superiority as Bayou soldiers in front of Nanling was completely destroyed. Of course, they were also very conscious and knew how to deal with themselves at this time. They returned to their rooms very simply and asked Xiaoxia to log them. This was to prove their innocence by imprisonment. Nanling didn't care about them and quickly returned to his territory to deal with the mess over there. The main reason was that when he was bombarded in the hyperspace before, the enemy aimed at the place near the engine room at the rear of his cabin, so after the shield was broken, his cabin had more or less stress deformation. This kind of deformation is the most troublesome to repair, and the cracks in the hull are not so important in comparison. Nanling did not rush to repair the damaged cabins, but instead directed the robots to move the folding shelves used to store supplies to the middle of the zooxia. Several activity rooms there were requisitioned as temporary warehouses for storing supplies. Anyway, there were few living people on the ship, and most of this space was wasted. After sealing that part of the cabin, the damage to the hull would not cause additional losses in supplies. He was close to the engine over there, and he also had to check if there was any problem in the engine room. Suddenly, Mo said in a serious voice, "Xiaonan, check the engine room immediately. The attack just now has had a certain impact on the engine, and many parameters are not right." Nanling hurried over when he heard it. Originally, the zooxia should not be so vulnerable, but he did not expect the opponent to launch a surprise attack in hyperspace, and it was obvious that they wanted to capture them, and they specifically targeted the engine room to attack. If the engine really stopped, it would be bad. He said, "I'll go there immediately. Xiaoxia, send me all the parameters of the engine room." He gave the order first. His intelligence core immediately received a large amount of parameter information. Just looking at these parameters, he really felt that something was not so wonderful. The energy pipelines were quite damaged, and it felt like there was a risk of losing control at any time. Nanling realized something at the time, and suddenly changed his mind and entered with the robot first. Alarm, high energy alarm. The moment the alarm sounded, boom. Just as his robot just stepped into the engine room, a small-scale explosion occurred here. Because of the special structure of the engine room, this explosion could not destroy all the facilities, but it was enough to stop the engine. Nanling survived and ensured his own life. The robot he sent was destroyed on the spot, which was miserable. He connected the communication and said, "Bad news, we have to find a place to dock, as soon as possible." He didn't need to notify at all. In fact, the Eudoxia was now in a state of almost losing control. Fanny responded on Mo's behalf. "I have two pieces of news for you, one good and one bad. The good news is that we will soon have a place to dock. The bad news is that we can only make a hard landing now." Nanling understood what was going on when he heard this. He looked around to see if there was a place where he could secure himself. But then he reacted immediately and let the robots around him hug him into a ball. Boom. The next moment, there was a violent impact. A hard landing is come in, Chapter 75 Galaxies Wrapped in Dark Matter. The impact was very violent, but Nanling was relatively calm with the help of a group of robots. He was just a little worried about whether the spaceship could withstand such an impact. He connected to the bridge with his consciousness. He projected over and saw Fanny and Mo being thrown around, but unfortunately he could not help. However, he had the permission to access consciousness, so he quickly saw the current situation of himself and others through the detector of Eudoxia. They were landing on a planet with mountains, water and atmosphere. The whole spaceship was gliding close to the ground and did not rush directly into the impact crater. This was because when the spaceship hit the planet, it adjusted an oblique cutting angle under the precise control of Eudoxia, and also used the auxiliary power system located under the boat to lift its head when landing. So this hard landing was actually hard with soft. Eudoxia pulled a long gully on the ground, and finally hit a mountain head-on, and nearly half of the hull crashed into the mountain, which was considered to be stopped. Then the mountain collapsed, and most of the ship was buried inside, leaving only the stern exposed. This is really troublesome. Nanling sighed. It is indeed troublesome. They have to dig out the hull first. Digging it out is not troublesome, but how to take out the large equipment from the hangar is troublesome. This part has been buried. To be honest, now that the starship has crashed on this nameless planet, there are really a lot of troubles waiting for everyone to do. Fanny sat up from the captain's seat with a daze and said, "We have to do it, but we have to be prepared to be trapped here for a long time." Mo said, "We can ask for help." Fanny shook her head and said, "Ask for help? Who to ask for help? Those people in Fenu? They drove us out. I don't have the face to ask them for help." Mo thought for a while and said, "You can go to the master." Fanny shook her head again and said, "It's useless. I won't bow to that old thing. It's okay that we were not allowed to recruit people in the ancient domain before, and now they've frozen my backup account. Damn it, I shouldn't have given Fenman Man that stupid goose so much money." Nanling seemed to have heard something extraordinary. His boss is out of money. Who knew that? He had just blinked, and Mo immediately turned to look at him and said, "Don't worry, you won't lack the reward. I have already left a reserve fund, but I'm afraid I have to be frugal in purchasing materials in the future." When Nanling heard that it was his sister Mo who explained this to him, he nodded and said, "I understand. In fact, I also bought a lot of extra materials in advance. In fact, our current materials are enough for us to last for a long time." In fact, he was still a little unhappy in his heart, because Mo's reaction made him seem like a person who only cares about money. Is he that kind of person? Nanling felt that he is that kind of person. As long as the money is in place, he is the most trustworthy. He quickly entered the mode of thinking to save money. He said, "There are many materials in the warehouse that can be used for hull repair, but my suggestion is that some precious raw materials can be used as inventory, and some conventional materials can be collected locally on this planet." The stingy attribute began to explode, and he was going to start teaching these ladies what it means to save money. Mo nodded, and she also felt that Nanling's suggestion was the most appropriate now. She said, "Then if there are enough food and drinking water?" Nanling said, "Enough. In addition to the food that Boss Fanny likes to eat, I also bought a lot of emergency food, which is enough for us to last for 3 to 5 years. Fanny felt unhappy when she heard it. She asked, "Then how long can those fresh ingredients I like to eat last?" Nanling thought about it and said, "If you eat sparingly, it should be fine for half a year. Don't worry, boss. When the time comes, I will take out the food you and Sister Mo eat separately and make sure no one finds it." Fanny felt a little embarrassed when she heard it. She said to save face, "No need to make those special arrangements, just eat with everyone. After eating, I will eat the emergency food with everyone." For a young lady who has been living a life of luxury since childhood, this is really a big decision. At this time, Liji's projection appeared on the bridge. She said, "The interrogation has a result, but shouldn't you think about how to get out of this planet now? You're actually talking about food here." She was speechless. Fanny was reminded and quickly added, "Don't worry, Xiaoxia is analyzing the geological conditions here. Isn't Xiaonan going to use local materials to repair the hull?" Nanling had actually been paying attention to this information for a long time. With the intelligent core, multi-threaded processing is the most basic. But in comparison, he was more concerned about where he and others had drifted. There are many ways to locate between stars. The simplest is to determine your position through the pulse electromagnetic waves of 3 specific neutron stars. So while everyone is waiting for the address report of this planet, they are also very concerned about their location. However, shocking feedback came. They lost the position of the 3 neutron stars that are usually used for positioning. Fanny complained in surprise. "It feels like we have lost the entire galaxy." Mo was calmer. She analyzed carefully. "It's impossible. According to the distance we flew in hyperspace before, this place should not be far from Chenyuan 06. Being attacked by that ship in hyperspace should not cause such a large deviation." Nanling had already walked out of the protection of the robot and was quickly returning to the place where the supplies were stored. Next, he would strengthen the defense here and check on his own residence. He saw their discussion on the way and interrupted. "So, either we triggered some extraordinary event and traveled to the distant starry sky, or this galaxy is very special." Fanny had already said, "No doubt, this galaxy must be very special. You can look through the navigation records before we fell." The picture was projected on Nanling's retina, and he saw the image from the first-person perspective of the Zhuoxia. Then he saw the star of this galaxy, a star that looked very strange. This star was red, but from this angle, it seemed to be entangled by countless black tentacles. The light of the star was blocked by these black substances and it was looming, looking like a bloody eyeball hidden in the black fog. Nanling took a breath and asked, "What is this?" Mo said, "If my guess is correct, this should be some kind of dark matter that exists here, even covering the entire galaxy. So the light from outside can't get in, and the information inside can't get out." Nanling listened to Mo's explanation and walked to his room. As a result, when he opened the door, he saw that the room was already a mess. The porthole was completely broken when it fell to the ground, and there was even a large piece of rock and soil rolling into the room when the mountain collapsed. However, this cabin was not buried, but just exposed outside the mountain so that he could see the situation outside. He came to the edge of the porthole, and the gaseous perception was fully turned on. Suddenly, the mask of the hurricane inner armor was untied, exposing his face to the air. He took a deep breath and didn't notice anything abnormal, but the oxygen concentration was a little low. Looking up at the sky again, he couldn't see the eye-like star like in space, but the light of this star was very dim when it shone on this planet under the cover of dark matter, and it could even be said to be a bit dark. Even when the stars were in the sky, this place looked eerie. The whole world was in a grayish-blue tone, which was really not pleasant. "I've decided. This planet will be called Pluto and the star will be called Eye of Pluto." "Perfect." Boss Fanny didn't feel bad for her Zhuoxia at all. Instead, she enthusiastically announced her sovereignty over the planet. "That's right. According to the Development Act, this planet is now Fanny's territory." Nanling rolled her eyes helplessly, thinking that it was fine as long as the boss was happy about this kind of thing. At this time, the geological exploration results of this Pluto also came in, and she began to receive this information and analyze it. P.S. I saw that many people were surprised by yesterday's plot. Actually, I have a story behind it in my mind, but I didn't show it to the protagonists. You can just think of this as a foreshadowing of the future plot. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.